And I am live. How's everyone doing this evening? So due to a scheduling miscommunication, and actually it's probably a lack of reading on my part, T.R. Hudson is with us only in spirit for the next possibly up to half an hour because he has to move the stream forward half an hour, and I read a whole hour. Then I scheduled it, published it, and decided to be here. So there will be no Hudson for the first portion of tonight's stream. Hello, Lacuna. Good to see you as well on this fine, wonderful evening. So last time we left it with Mr. Saddam Hussein failing to heed the earnest warnings of the UN Security Council and the United States of America to withdraw from Kuwait. And so his troops remaining there forced us to act. We had no choices. We had no choices left, because when you give someone an ultimatum and they fail to heed your desire for peace, then you have nothing left to do but then to dispatch a squad of A-10 Warthogs to the largest highway in the country and mow down all of the military and civilian targets available to you. So, what is on the screen right now is actually not what we are going to be reading, but because I'm terrified of doxing myself by doing a screen share, we're just going to leave it there, and Hudson can catch up when he arrives. And again, all fault for this is resting solely on my broad, rippling shoulders. So, just watch CNN. In November 1990, only days away from his long-awaited Special Forces tryout, the primary reason for his re-enlistment, McVeigh's unit, along with the rest of Fort Riley's 1st Mechanized Infantry Division, learned of their impending deployment to the Persian Gulf. McVeigh wrote to Steve, telling him that he did not know the details about where exactly in the Gulf he would be or what he would be doing there. All he knew was that he would be in the desert for a while. You probably know as much as us, he admitted, instructing him to just watch CNN. They told us today that if any of us were an only child, we wouldn't be deployed to carry on the family name. Several cohorts later recalled how commanders told them that if a ground war were to start, the majority of them, up to 75% even, could die, and described the fear they experienced upon learning this. If there isn't a war, he wrote, we stay for 1 year. If there is, I'll probably be back a lot sooner in a box. Tell your mom to send goodies. A year in the desert is a long time. He continued, writing that on the bright side, he had recently received a promotion to corporal and expected to receive his sergeant stripes shortly. As far as his upcoming Special Forces tryout, McVeigh later told his attorneys that when he learned of his deployment to Iraq, I thought that was all right. I didn't know what would happen with the Special Forces training. I figured I could just reapply when I got back. Yeah. So to be clear, McVeigh got fucked out of the Special Forces by the specific date of deployment, and because he was enrolled in the cohort program against his wishes or knowledge, which is par for the course with military recruiters. As I understand it, I don't know. I never signed up for that. So let's see. And also it's kind of crazy that the superiors in the military were warning all of their troops that 75% could die. So, I mean, did they actually believe that, or was it to just tell them not to get cocky? It doesn't really, I don't know. It doesn't totally make sense to me. But because it did seem, I don't know, being a 7-year-old at the time, it did seem like the United States was just going to go in there and rock face, which in this particular war in Iraq is exactly what happened, as you probably well know. Friend and commanding officer Sergeant Weathers Bill Withers, really, said that McVeigh disagreed with the decision to go to war, believing it to be just a political scheme. McVeigh said Withers did not think the United States had any business or interest in Kuwait, but he knew it was his duty to go where he was told, and he went. McVeigh himself later explained that he was aware of the wartime propaganda put forth by the U.S. at the time. I remember Bush refusing the Kuwaiti offer to pay each soldier $5,000. He said we weren't mercenaries. I remember Bush's multiple trips and junkets to Kuwait himself to receive gifts, etc. He explained on this in a letter and to his biographers. And that's a weird use of the word "on," explaining how throughout the big lead up, a lot of rhetoric was flying around, including claims that all Iraqis and Saddam were evil. To him, the formulaic nature and logical progression of these amounted to kill Saddam equals kill Iraqis equals kill the evil or destroy the evil. So true, King. So Lacuna, could McVeigh have made that up to sound cool? Possibly. I mean, McVeigh was plausibly making up a lot of things in his letters to pump himself up, but it's possible that is something that occurred. So it said several cohorts later recalled how commanders told them that if a ground war were to start, the majority of them, up to 75%, could die. So if it's coming from multiple people, I'd have to think that while McVeigh would totally do that, that probably was said or at least communicated. So, granted a brief leave prior to his deployment to the Middle East, McVeigh returned home to Western New York. Like the other men in his unit, he was afraid and expressed this to his loved ones he visited with there, including the neighbors at whose homes he had taken shelter as a child. Mrs. Dangler, name changed. Thank you, Wendy, for the name change. Said he told us he knew he was going to come home in a body bag. He was sure he was going to die. I wondered if there was a part of him that may have wanted it to happen. Mrs. McDermott said it was the first time she saw him with tears in his eyes. While most of Charlie Company had already arrived in Saudi Arabia, when his leave was over, McVeigh returned to Fort Riley, where he and 37 others in his platoon remained awaiting deployment orders. In a letter written to Steve on January 6th, 1991, January 6th mentioned, he announced his flight to the Gulf would be leaving that night, and a month would pass before he wrote his next letter. During a press conference in early November 1990, Defense Secretary Dick Cheney discussed the buildup and deployment of further troops to the Gulf and specifically mentioned Fort Riley's famous 1st Mechanized Infantry Division, who were to join other armored units normally stationed in Germany. At some point after he arrived in the Gulf, McVeigh, along with other Bradley operators and teams from Charlie Company and the Marines' 1st and 2nd Divisions, became a crucial component of the 7th Corps, a forward armored assault force described as the largest armored corps ever assembled. After an extensive U.S. and Allied air assault, the 7th Corps would spearhead the ground war, conducting an initial breaching of operations into Iraqi-held territory. McVeigh specifically became part of 7 Corps' main effort, Task Force 337, or Task Force Iron, Alpha Company, 3rd Platoon. All of those names are absolutely Kino. Big fan of 7 Corps, Task Force Iron, Alpha Company, 3rd Platoon. So he was in a Bradley fighting vehicle, which, as Hudson informed me last time, is sort of a lighter kind of tank, highly mobile, much smaller than an M1 Abrams, which is the tank I was more familiar with, but it is treaded, unlike say any of the smaller kinds of more troop carrying focus things. So it is a true light tank. The Gulf War spectacle. The first casualty when the war comes is truth. U.S. Senator Hiram Johnson, 1917. Hiram, that's not a name you hear much anymore. It is Lindy, though. I like Hiram. If there is a war, and if Bush has his way with the media coverage, the haunting and unforgettable face of battle will be masked for an American public. Patrick Sloyan, Washington Post, January 13th, 1991. Back when journalists didn't like war occasionally. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Psalm 91, reportedly read to U.S. troops in January 1991 as Iraqi Scud missiles targeted Saudi Arabia. New York Times, February 4th, 1991. When the New York Times would mention a Bible verse without criticism. So Desert Shield turned into a perfect shitstorm when, on the evening of January 17th, 1991, U.S. and Allied forces began a massive aerial assault upon Baghdad and surrounding areas. Suddenly, flashy new U.S. weapons with catchy names, including the Tomahawk, Maverick, and Hellfire missiles, F-16 Falcons, F-117 stealth bombers, and Cobra and Apache helicopters, disrupted the darkness of the Iraqi night. Its silence exploded into mind-numbing noise. Cars shook with reverberation. The ground was quaking as each new missile struck the city. The structure of buildings swayed and shivered. The spectacular Allied airstrikes were relentless, ceaselessly dropping an estimated 88,500 tons of explosives over the next 42 days in what one journalist described as the greatest bombardment in human history and heaviest bombardment any city on Earth had undergone since the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That seems actually like it's probably not true, just because Baghdad still exists. And I mean, there were plenty of old buildings when we invaded again, 12 years later. I don't know. It just seems like, you level Hiroshima and Nagasaki or Dresden or the firebombing of Tokyo. It just seems like, the first Gulf War was probably not the heaviest bombardment of Baghdad. But, who am I? I wasn't there. In violation of international law, the carpet bombings employed fuel-air explosives and napalm and burned through nearly 12 million gallons of fuel per day. Military spokespeople appeared on media outlets explaining that the air assault was necessary to shape the battlefield by destroying Saddam's stockpiles of weapons. Primary targets of the attack included the Iraqi air and naval forces, Scud missile launchers, weapons research facilities, chemical weapons factories, ammunition depots, oil pumping stations and supply lines in Baghdad and elsewhere, as well as Saddam's command and communication facilities and aircraft and personnel bunkers. Among the other ostensible military objectives was the destruction of civilian and military infrastructure throughout Iraq and Kuwait, inciting fear and horror and affecting submissiveness within Iraqi command. What do they mean by weapons research facilities? Is that what actual novel weapons is being created in places like Iraq? I mean, was he working on a nuclear weapon? Did we provide any of that information to him? It seems like they would have known, right? Since Bush Sr. was the former head of the CIA, he probably had a pretty good handle on the random nefarious goings on. But I almost think that weapons research facilities has to be a euphemism for, it has to be a euphemism for just some sort of miscellaneous production facility. Like, maybe they had maybe they had like a ammunition manufacturing building, but I don't know. It seems like there couldn't possibly be that much going on. Lacuna, you said missiles. Yeah, maybe, but the Scud missiles were purchased. They were buying these things, or they had been given to them by the United States. So, yeah. While ground war had not yet started, it must have seemed so to untold numbers of Iraqi soldiers who immediately began retreating on foot and in mobile convoys, many deserting their posts to join over 1 million Iraqi civilians also attempting to flee targeted areas. As they did so, U.S. pilots rained bombs upon thousands along the highways leading out of Baghdad that quickly filled with bumper-to-bumper traffic. Television viewers at home enjoyed the Pentagon's carefully selected footage of ballistic missiles lighting up the skies of Iraq. The Guardian described the coverage as a hypnotic spectacle of moving graphics and death-dealing explosives, akin to a desensitizing, addictive arcade game. Now, this was 1991, so this was significantly more real-looking than any of the available arcade games. Although Missile Command is evergreen to me. While the Pentagon denied that the U.S. and its allies targeted Iraqi civilians, many died during the air assault. Conspicuously absent from the hypnotic spectacle of U.S. television coverage was any mention of these Iraqi civilian casualties or the damage to critical civilian infrastructure, including the bombed-out, obliterated homes, mosques, and even a baby formula plant, not to mention the shallow and expeditiously dug graves. Fleeing Iraqis and Jordanians told reporters about buses filled with civilians who were strafed by airborne munitions, describing countless burned vehicles and casualties that line the highways and towns over 75 miles east of the border, deep within Iraq. Yeah, there's definitely it's confirmed now that the highway of death, which Wendy Painting will describe further on, that they were absolutely just indiscriminately blowing up cars. So have no idea who is in those. So let's see. Saddam responded to the air assault by declaring the great showdown has begun. The mother of all battles is underway. He further declared that Iraq would crush the evil and satanic intentions of the White House. In the days to follow and throughout the duration of the conflict, Iraq reportedly launched a number of Scud missiles into Saudi Arabia and Israel. The U.S. claimed to have neutralized many of these by firing the newly repurposed Patriot missile, the first anti-missile missile. Later, numerous reports called into question the Pentagon's reported accuracy rates for the Patriot and Tomahawk missiles. Well, we know that Iron Dome actually does work, but maybe they didn't work so great then. Lacuna, the Gulf War syndrome is one of those things that is a little bit mysterious even today. I'm not sure exactly, mostly because the people who complain of Gulf War syndrome had sort of a nebulous set of symptoms for Gulf War syndrome. Then they were really inconsistent. So, it's sort of like when people now talk about long COVID, how it's never actually the same between two people. So, now, were they exposed to some weird shit? I mean, yeah, self-evidently, but it's not, that's one plausible explanation, but it's also possible.
Hello.
Experiment on by our own folks, as we know the military does like to do. Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Havana syndrome as well. Yeah, that's right. Another mysterious set of malady. Or there's that other disease that is there's several diseases that are arguably real, like TMS, which is sort of a jaw issue, or I forget what it's called. I think it starts with an M. Help me out here if you know. But essentially, people think that strange fibers are appearing in cuts on their skin, and that one's probably not real.
Hello, Cap. Can you hear me?
Yeah. All right. Can anyone hear Hudson? Because I sure can't hear Hudson. Let me check if my brain worms are working appropriately here. Want to tell me if you can hear him? Oh, he's gone. He died. All right. Well, I'm sure he'll be back momentarily. Let's see here. Bear with us while we reset. There we go. All right. He's back.
Hello.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. And apparently they could hear you.
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
Did Cap, did you make sure to tell everybody this is not my fault?
I made sure to tell everybody that it was your fault.
Good.
They're all well aware. They're all well aware that you were tardy, more tardy, and in a different way than you usually are. But we're on the Gulf War spectacle right now.
Yeah, let me get my bearings, as it were.
It's a different way than the way you normally get bears.
Big lead up, Desert Shield. Just watch on CNN. Where were we? The
The
Gulf
next
War
one.
spectacle. Got
Yep.
it. Okay.
You're on it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for your grace with my my co-host and his speediness. He
so
loves
fast.
Expediency. His wife.
I made great time, by the way, not having to chat with you between every other sentence.
Yeah, no, you did great.
That's I bet I could read this book even faster if I didn't have to read it aloud. We should just do it that way. We should just do the streams that way.
Yeah, no, everybody get your own copy. We'll all hang out together.
We'll all just join the stream and not say anything while we enjoy that. No end towers in chat, please.
We certainly won't be reading them.
All right. Let's see.
I'm not reading that.
Geg. I don't even know what I don't know what a geg is. Let's see. Great showdown. Yeah, okay. So Saddam responded by saying that it's a great showdown, not just a raffle stomping. But yeah. So let's see here.
Was he wrong? Was Saddam wrong?
It wasn't really a great showdown. No.
The
subsequent one was way more costly. I mean, yeah. Look, Ryan Gosling and Nan, you don't need to apologize. We love our end towers, don't we, folks? We all love them.
Yeah, but it's just that Susan Wojcicki over at YouTube, she has a couple of banned planes that go right into our end towers.
Yeah, she's really ever since she started experiencing the change without successfully reproducing, she's been a real fucking cunt about it. So that probably won't get us banned. Who knows?
No. We love you, Mama Susan.
Also, I think she actually does have kids, so it might just be we're gonna get a disinfo tag under this episode that isn't related to the Oklahoma City bombing. It's just related to Susan having kids.
Honestly, I love misinformation.
I love misinformation. I love misinformation. I love disinformation. I love malinformation.
Yeah, today, I had a tweet about why the Concorde program was canceled. The Concorde plane, the supersonic jet airliner.
The Concorde, yes.
The Concorde, yes. Yeah, so I said that the reason that it was canceled is because of solar flares. And I'm pretty certain that is the reason, but that they never actually gave a reason as to why.
No, it was because it cost way more to fly.
No,
it was really expensive.
It's from what I said.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it was definitely solar. It was chupacabras. That's the problem. It was the chupacabras.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
All right. On January 19th, 1991, in the conflict's first publicly known commando operation, U.S. troops raided offshore oil platforms near Kuwait, capturing 12 Iraqis. Iraq threatened to transport their own prisoners, should they take any, to strategic locations to serve as human shields. This is where I'd keep my American Special Forces prisoners.
If I
had any. Yes. High five all deltas. here's the thing. I might not be the biggest booster of the regime, even on this show, but
Delta Force is objectively cool.
But operators are just objectively cool. Like, it is good. It is good and awesome to be excellent at killing things. So, all respect. Never kick in my door. If you come for me, I will surrender. I will not fight back. Don't destroy my house. You put the cuffs on me. It's great. Don't shoot my dog.
I will become a confidential informant against Tukey's Mag. I will sell out Cap and Gabe and David.
Oh, I mean, you've been saying that every single episode. You just really wanna, like, you're just really looking for you're putting in job applications is what you're doing, aren't you?
Yep.
That's the
for the love of God, please. I don't even need to get paid.
Please arrest me. Please arrest me.
Sheep dip me so I can be on Tukey. I'll be the Tukey's Mag sheep dip guy.
God.
Over in the Tukey's Discord, I'll be like, hey guys, we should go protest at the Capitol.
Great idea, Hudson. All right. American media reported that the invading Iraqis had purposefully blown up a number of Kuwaiti oil fields, wells, storage tanks, holding jet fuel and kerosene, installations and pipelines, and in an act that constituted a war crime, threatened to blow up more as part of a scorched earth campaign against Kuwait. On January 23rd, an estimated 400 million gallons of crude oil spilled into the Persian Gulf, the biggest oil spill. What?
Just
threatening to blow up more, blowing up infrastructure. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like.
I feel like that's just like a war act.
An act of war, but
it's not like it's not like there were people at the. I mean, I guess. No, that doesn't seem like a war crime to me.
Yeah, I mean, once you've been invaded, it's okay to commit acts of war. I think we can all agree that once you're fighting a hot war, you can't really call someone out on committing an act of war. So, let's see. 400 million gallons of crude oil spilled into the Persian Gulf, the biggest oil spill in history at that time. How could you give away that much oil? That is tragic to give away that much oil. Iraq claimed the spill resulted from U.S. allied bombings. Whatever the origin of the spill, winds carried the fumes in all directions, and within weeks, southerly winds pushed much of the oil into the Gulf away from the Saudi coastline, leaving behind birds and other wildlife covered with deadly goo.
That sounds like a 50s block sci-fi.
The deadly goo.
Or just like a leisurely stroll through Gabe's bedroom.
Oh my God! All of the poor birds. Gabe explained this to me one time. What he's trying to do is attract one of those like really nice, sort of crunchy women who wants to get Dawn soap and wash the birds that are covered in deadly goo. It's just that none of them ever survive long enough for the crunchies to find out.
Yeah, Gabe has a crate propped up by a stick with a string at the end, and underneath the crate is a goo-covered bird.
A goo-covered bird. What are you trying to do? Trying to get my Jane Goodall, bitch. All right. Neither the raids nor the oil spills affected oil prices, which, while fluctuating, had begun to drop as the value of the growing military-industrial market stocks rose. On January 26th, Colin Powell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, authorized U.S. military commanders in the Gulf to use non-lethal riot control gases against Iraqi troops and POWs. Powell described they're non-lethal, so it's just torture, folks. Don't worry.
Don't worry. We're not trying to kill them. We're just trying to make them really uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
On POWs.
Yeah. Why are you gassing those POWs? Because
to teach them a lesson for being Iraqi.
Yeah. Oh my God, what is fucking happening in chat here?
Gabe Triots are in control.
Fact check by True Gabe Patriots. Gabe Triots. Oh God. EL, can you not? With a K. Let's see. Powell described the chemical compounds as basically tear gas and assured the media that their use certainly did not constitute chemical warfare.
Well, mustard gas is basically tear gas.
It's tear gas of sufficient concentrations to kill you, right?
Well, no, I mean the chemical makeup is different, but basically the same.
Well, it's an irritant. It's an irritant. It's just that in the quantities that do get suspended in the atmosphere, it causes such severe irritations that you get lesions in all of your mucous membranes, which unfortunately includes your lungs.
So when I was in the Army, we were cleaning up the barracks, and this one dude accidentally made homemade mustard gas because he.
Oh, you mean cyanide gas?
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, chlorine gas.
Yeah, because he mixed
ammonia and bleach.
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, this will definitely make everything super clean," and we had to be out of the barracks for like 4 hours while they.
Oh, yeah. What's really funny on this stream that is ultimately about the OKC bombing? We just gave everyone the recipe for chlorine gas.
I mean, you could Google that.
You could Google a lot of things, buddy. We gotta read a book on making methamphetamine. We'll see how long the Tookie's back channel stays up.
Well, you see, officers. Cap is the one that told them. I just said what was made. I didn't say how to make it. It's Cap's fault.
It's I mean, what can you just give someone the recipe and say it makes a delicious peanut brittle?
We are just going to edit that out in post. It's going to get edited, and we're editing in post.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not editing. Let's see. Where was I here? Oh, did not constitute chemical warfare. The non-lethal gases delivered by hand grenades, mortar shells, and aerial bombs, he said, would be useful in urban combat, such as house-to-house situations, as they could effectively immobilize individuals, especially escaping or rioting POWs. But was less than explicit.
Again, I don't understand. Like, they're really harping on the fact that they're going to use these on POWs.
Yeah, it's like the people we've already captured. I mean, look,
those cowards who refuse to die.
Imagine how much money you could save on fences and walls for a prison if you just keep dropping, a ring of tear gas so that it's super concentrated and they can't escape in any direction. They just have to stay in the middle where it's diffuse.
Better yet, before you build the prison, you just around where they're going to live, you just put a lot of landmines.
Oh, yeah. No, it's like an invisible fence for dogs.
Yeah.
They'll
learn,
It'll hurt a lot. Yeah. They'll never cross it.
You only need like a handful. Right.
You can just
tell them,
paint a red line on the ground, and they'll be like, "All right, well, past that, it's going to hurt a lot," and then make it be true.
Yeah.
Yes. Please join us next time on Library of Mass Destruction, where we pull out the cookbook and teach you how to make your very own homemade vril using nothing more than a Fedra and some homemade some home cleaning supplies.
Don't forget the contents of your ordinary golf ball.
I didn't know that was
No. You see, there was an episode of The Simpsons where Homer was trying to make a nuclear reactor at home.
Yeah,
and he went to like www.nuclearsecrets.com. And I think there was a picture of Saddam on the website next to a list of everything that you'd need. And he's just like, oh, well, you can find that in any ordinary golf ball. Anyway.
Perfect. In the actual anarchist cookbook, it says that one way to get super high is to clean out the inside flesh of a banana peel, dry it out, roll it up, and smoke it. And that's not true. And I'm not proud. I'm not proud of saying that.
How do you know it's not true?
Well, because I tried it. And we were all young once. There's a time and a place for everything. When a certain young muse was running away with Cormac McCarthy at the same age, I was drying out the inside of a banana peel and seeing if it could get me ripped. So
it's true what they say: women mature faster than men.
Hey man, if it had worked, I would have started selling that stuff. So I'm just saying, this was both libertine and entrepreneurial. So
apparently, if you there's a medical silver, right?
And colloidal silver.
Yeah, if you drink enough of it, it will turn you blue.
Yes. That one of the best kinds of medical woo woo.
Smoking banana peels is very pinchon coated.
So that's very true. That is very true.
I don't think I haven't read Gravity's Rainbow. I don't know if it's in there.
Oh man,
I know everything else for a banana is in there.
It's getting a little hard to keep up with chat. You guys are popping off. I appreciate it.
We would really appreciate super chats, Gabe.
So true. If you take enough dextroamphetamine salts, you'll get the blue in Blue from Dune. I mean, who knows?
Maybe is that how they were able to get Zendaya's eyes to look like that? They just pumped her full of meth.
Cookbook is horseshit. Try TM31-210 improvised munitions handbook. Yeah, I mean, you can also, if you really want some stuff, you could always try FiCal or ThiCal, which, I mean, FiCal or ThiCal, either of those could be good for LMD. But it is kind of I don't know if have you read either of those, Hudson?
I've not, no, because I'm not on any lists that I know of, at least.
Well, I mean, Alexander the Shulgins, actually, because it was a husband and wife team. I mean, it's like at this point, like sort of a countercultural classic.
I see.
But yeah, basically, phenylethylamines I have known and loved, and I can't actually remember what the thigh is. But yeah,
I never paid attention in science class.
Well, it's just a bunch of psychoactive chemicals that they tell you how to form and then what they do to you.
Okay. So, is the ping pong ball on your eyelids, like, is that bullshit?
What are you talking about?
If you like cut a ping pong ball in half or whatever, and you tape them over your eyelids, and then you do something, it's apparently it's like going into a basically you're trying to numb all your senses, so you're like in a sensory deprivation tank or whatever, and it like
I don't believe that it would be possible to deprive yourself of senses enough to induce what happens in a deprivation tank by doing that. Yeah.
All right, Gabe, we have a mission for you. We want you to goon inside the deprivation tank and tell us what happens.
You have to replace all of the sensations inside of the deprivation. The only sensations in the deprivation tank are the ones you bring with you, which is gooning. Yes.
Wonder that you take picture.
All right. Yeah, it was supposed to effectively immobilize individuals, especially escaping or rioting POWs, but was less than explicit about the exact chemical agents the DoD intended or did not intend to use. Critics argued that the use of these gases violated the Geneva Convention rules, as well as other restrictions against the use of chemical weapons. Also on January 26th, as U.S. submarines began launching missiles from the Persian Gulf and Red Sea, always fucking keynote to see missiles getting launched from submarines.
Yep.
17,000 individuals, as part of a growing but largely unreported anti-war movement, arrived in D.C. to march at the Capitol. Opposing them were 3,500 pro-war demonstrators, true patriots in control. Meanwhile, that same day, anti-war demonstrators blocked the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. The following day, McVay's hometown team, the Buffalo Bills, lost to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl. Of all of Wendy's, of all of Wendy Painting PhD's writing tics. The one I love the most is her incredible willingness to list all of the losses of the Buffalo Bills.
It really, this book is just one long Trumpian weave to shit on the Buffalo Bills.
That's the ulterior motive. It's 12D chess to get to work shitting on the Buffalo Bills into her dissertation. It's perfect. It's perfect. Bad company behind enemy lines, sitting ducks, sacrificial lambs, and random death from above. Every single one of her subsection headlines is good. Every single one of them.
Yep.
I am glad we're out of Avalanche of Decay territory.
But I really hope she brings it back. We still have the counter.
She just like she full circles it at the end.
Bad company, and I won't deny. Did you?
That's a good song.
Bit of trivia for you, Cap. Who sings the song "Bad Company"?
Creed. I don't know. It's not them.
It's actually Bad Company.
Really?
Yep. And and what album was it on?
Probably Bad
Company. Yep.
So if you were to like have this in your MP3 library, it would say Bad Company, Bad Company, Bad Company.
Wow, an MP3.
What?
Spotify?
Absolutely not. No. And in fact, I still buy physical media. I just, nowadays when you buy vinyl, it comes with a download code.
Yeah, that's true. I'm actually a big vinyl fan myself. It just, I don't know. We could go down that rabbit hole, but it sounds better. It really does.
Gabe says, "You will not steal my vril." Quote from man whose vril was stolen.
Exactly. And Gabe, nobody wants to steal your vril considering that you just throw it everywhere.
Yeah, you spill your vril on the cold, dusty ground.
You've flushed more vril than I don't know, something that gets flushed a lot.
EL, marital vril theft is not real. It's a thing that was made up.
Yeah. You're entitled to give her your vril. Actually,
that's your duty as a spouse to pump her full of vril.
But at the same time,
she also can't deny receiving your vril.
Yeah, no, you have to shout at her, "I will give you my fuck," and she has to.
Do you want be making fuck? Is the all right? Let's see, where are we? The ongoing Allied air assault cleared the path for the impending ground war, and by February 4th, 1991, the last stage of the biggest, fastest deployment and largest logistical move in military history began. More than 500,000 U.S. troops had arrived in the Gulf by this time, part of a growing number poised on the Iraq-Kuwaiti border. In General Norman Schwarzkopf's war plan, praised by tacticians and military theorists, the 7 Corps' 1st Armored Division was led to the Hail Mary or left hook, northeast through the Iraqi deserts, seeking out and destroying specifically the 4 best paid, equipped, and trained Iraqi divisions, part of the infamous Iraqi Republican Guard. Essential to General Schwarzkopf's Hail Mary operation was the new Bradley fighting vehicle, BFV, boldly touted as one of the most extensively tested and safest vehicles at the Army's disposal, and essential to combat power on the ground.
Okay, did you ever read that book, Pentagon Wars? There was also a movie.
I did not.
There's also a movie out, and it's about the Bradley fighting vehicle. Basically, the guy who designed it, it was like supposed to be this.
Lacuna, thank you very much for the super chat.
Thank you, Lacuna.
You can say things when you
want
send those too.
If you want to start an end tower, Lacuna, it's all
now
right.
You can. Yes.
All right. No, so the Bradley fighting vehicle was originally designed to be a troop transport vehicle, right? And you see throughout the course of the book and the movie that was later made, it basically becomes a horse by committee, right? They add guns to it. They add anti-tank missiles because tanks are going to think that it's a tank if you add a big gun to the top of it. So you need something that can take out a tank. They cut down the carry capacity of troops in there because they need room for all the rounds of ammunition that the big gun is going to fire. It's a total clusterfuck. And then at the end of it, it turns out that the armor that is quote unquote so safe, if an RPG hits the side of the tank, because much like the armored personnel carriers in Vietnam, it'll explode.
Okay. So there was like some critical design failure that if you hit it in just the right spot, the whole thing fucking goes.
Yep, and they tested it, and the Defense Department was like, "Well, we've already spent so much money on this thing." It's called Pentagon Wars. Everybody, you should go check it out. It's a really good film. It's got the guy from Cary Elwes or
Cary Elwes.
Elwes, yeah, I never know how to say his name.
Yeah, Cary Elwes from The Princess Bride.
Yes, yep. He stars in that. Very, very good film.
The Dread Pirate Roberts. Yeah, yes. I wonder what Cary Elwes is up to, because I also like Robin Hood Men in Tights.
He was actually one of the he played the director of national intelligence in the most recent Mission Impossible film. He's in a lot of character roles these days, and you can never tell it's him.
Did Cornman McGillicuddy give his real willingly to his teenage cowgirl GF, or did she steal it?
She stole it with that big Colt pistol that she had on her.
Yep, she had the big iron. That's iron topical. That will be very. No one will understand what the hell that reference is if someone is listening to this in 5 years.
I have that album on vinyl. It's one of my treasured possessions.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the Marty Robbins nice. Trail songs.
And is the rest of it good?
Oh, the rest of it's amazing.
Oh, it's all bangers.
Yeah, it's literally nonstop bangers.
They picked but is Big Iron a B-side, or is it the best song?
So it's the first song on the album.
Okay.
And it's definitely it's probably in the top half of the songs on the album. But I think there's one sort of ballad about this guy who shoots his ex-girlfriend and her new lover.
Okay.
And then he's singing he's sad because they're gonna hang him tonight. It's called Hanging Me Tonight. That's a really good one. And then there's one about a horse thief who is almost stampeded to death. He prays to God, and God kills all the cows, and he lives.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's called The Master's Call. Excellent song. One of my favorites.
That's ever. Super sick. God just kills a stampede worth of cattle.
Yep.
All right. Back to the Bradley fighting vehicle.
The Bradley piece of shit.
Bradley, I think I might have said something nice about the Bradley before.
It could. The only thing nice I'll say about the Bradley is that it can fit quite a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but that's only if you're putting the fertilizer in the ammo storage, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, Bartholomew the Red. Strawberry Roan is a great song. And Gabe, I mentioned the Master's Call.
I may have to go. I may have to go look up.
Penultimo.
Look up that.
Penultimo, don't fence me in. That's really funny.
All right. Let's see. The Bradley had the capacity to house one infantry squad consisting of a vehicle commander, driver, gunner, and up to 7 additional dismounted soldiers. The multiple launch rocket system, MLRS, could fire projectiles that, arriving at their intended targets, exploded in midair, sending a spray of smaller bomblets designed to pierce the outside of armored vehicles, or, if they hit the ground, exploded to shrapnel whose radius of destruction spanned the size of an American football field. Bradley manufacturers also claim that the vehicles had the capacity to drive over obstacles 3 feet high, trenches up to 8 feet deep, climb at angles of 60 degrees, and were designed with amphibious underwater capabilities.
It could do none of these things.
What?
It could do none of these things.
It could not do these things. Okay. Maybe at some point in its design it was capable of doing that, and then some shit got changed, and it's like, oh yeah, I can't do that shit. Can't do that shit anymore.
I'm on break.
Both the we on break. Both the military and the Bradley manufacturer claimed that it had 4 major advantages. Mesh coats of low explosive reactive armor consisting of aluminum and depleted uranium, which added up to 5 tons in weight. Lightweight and rapid acceleration capability. Thermal optic night sighting systems, and newly designed and more accurate aiming systems. Gunners had an array of weapons at their disposal. Mounted on the top of the Bradley was a 25mm cannon, M60 machine gun, and an anti-tank tow missile system. Thus, McVeigh now found himself in the role of a Bradley gunner in one of the war's foremost advanced units, tasked with breaching the front lines and trailblazing for the 64-ton Abrams tanks following close behind. As the Bradley driver plowed through the sand, McVeigh, aided by thermal sights, would look for and, if found, blow up landmines, incoming missiles, enemy troops, and their vehicles. Painted on the side of McVeigh's Bradley tank was the name he had given it, Bad Company.
Okay, here's a question for you, Cap. Do we get Battlefield Bad Company without Tim McVeigh?
I'm going to say no.
So, we can say that Timothy McVeigh is a controversial figure with some good points.
Some good quality, some good consequences.
Known for other work, though.
Known for his other work. Timothy McVeigh, the inspiration for Battlefield Bad Company?
Bad Company, and I can't deny.
On February 6, 1991, about a month after he had arrived in Saudi Arabia, McVeigh wrote to Steve, telling him about the recent promotions to E5 sergeant and the duties this entailed. I key the entire task force, he explained. Of course, the glory has a price. Look where I am. He apologized to Steve, writing that although he had a lot he wanted to get off his mind, he could not seem to concentrate. His thoughts, he said, centered on one thing: the combat they had rehearsed during the previous 4 days. I shouldn't say what I'm about to, McVeigh disclosed, but we're going to burst through so fucking quick, the Iraqis will think it's a bad dream. And when they blink to wake up, they'll be dead. Other people
in a tomb of sand.
Other people will brag about being part of the initial attack, but you can't get more spearhead than my vehicle. For now, here's all I can say, so someone knows that if I die, it wasn't in the rear echelon. Shot down in a blaze of glory. I'll make it, though. I have my own fire plan. 3 days later,
he said, "Oh no, he's shot down in a daze of glory."
In a daze of glory. There we go. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so very different from a blaze of glory.
I mean, it's pretty similar. The Hindenburg of sand.
You killed a lot of sand. The sand was very evil.
Let's see. The silica. If it's my time, it's my time. Still, when he wrote her again 2 days later, he hinted. Oh, sorry, I skipped something. 3 days later, he wrote his sister telling her they had been very busy practicing for the attack, and said he was not nervous because if it's my time, it's my time. Still, when he wrote her again 2 days later, he hinted at his denied anxiety by signing the letter "Love, Tim," a closing unseen among his countless other letters written both before and after the Gulf War.
Wait, so sorry, who is this letter to?
He wrote to his sister.
Oh, okay, because it's giving off very much "I wish we boned before I left" energy.
No.
So I'm glad that you cleared that up before I said that.
Why you saying "Love, Tim" is
no about how he's like, well, if I die, I die.
If I die, I die. I'm so cool. Cheerleaders for the Bradley sometimes boldly claimed that the ground war depended upon his performance, but despite his training, McVeigh had reason to be anxious. The Bradley was also among the most criticized vehicles in the U.S. military history. At the time of the Gulf War, the Bradley remained.
Get you some coffee, dude.
So, man, you know what? I tried. You know this because I mentioned it to you earlier today. I tried some Zins today, and I'm not like a cigarette smoker. I smoke cigars occasionally, and I got fucking high from having a 3 milligram Zin in my fucking cheek for 10 minutes. It was unfucking believable. It was the worst.
So I was in a chat, or I'm still in a chat with some true LMD patriots, and they said, which host are you, the funny one or the less funny one? I of course said I was the funny one. They said, oh yes, the less funny one. He yawns too much. So
yeah, that didn't fucking happen.
I will show you screenshots.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I actually think the yawning is about breath control rather than my actual fatigue. Although it has been a long day. Let's see. Let's see. At the time of the Gulf War, the Bradley remained untested in realistically simulated or actual combat situations. Its known failures and defects included susceptibility to catastrophic chemical fires when hit by anti-armor weapons. The armor shattered, burned, and exploded.
You know, I just have to stop talking and just let Wendy tell us everything, because this is what I went over, you know?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, it always happens, right? Like someone says, oh yeah, here's a little bit more. No, she gets to it, doesn't she?
I have a fun fact. No, actually, fuck you. I have all the facts. I'm Wendy Painting PhD.
Wendy has 100% of the facts. Let's see. Pyrotechnic prowess, the fuel tanks and ammunition exploded easily when hit. Amphibious capabilities, they tended to sink. Agility, they sometimes jammed or abruptly slowed to half speed. Mobility, they often became stuck or dug in. And durability, the door of one fell off after it was rear-ended, leaving those inside to drive over the door repeatedly in an attempt to re-flatten it. Beginning around February 1st, 1991, and continuing until after McVeigh penned his letters. I want to read the full incident report on running over the door until it was flat.
You see, sir, we just kept running it over with the treads of our tank until it was flat. It did not work.
It did not work, and we drove the whole way back with the door off the Bradley.
As the captain said, well, it's not like you're going to be backing into combat.
I mean that is actually fair, but don't let anyone get behind you. Yeah. Beginning around February 1st, 1991, and continuing until after McVeigh penned his first letters from the Gulf, media outlets reported that the Army was conducting inspections of 300 to 500 of the 2,000 Bradley vehicles in the Gulf. As it turned out, many of the models positioned on the front lines had a possible transmission defect that could reduce the 6,000-pound armored personnel carrier's speed from 40 miles per hour to 10, or cause it to jam completely, essentially rendering those inside sitting ducks in combat situations. Plus, the massive size of the Bradley made it more visible, thus a prime target for improvised situations. Plus, for improvised explosive devices. Skip back a line. Enemy gunfire and anti-tank missiles. In addition to this snafu, news outlets also continued to report Army field officers' ongoing investigations concerning the disappearance of more than 50 Bradley vehicles from a base in East Saudi Arabia, the location of the first armored. When contacted by reporters, some officers claimed terrorists stole them. Others said American troops stole them to obtain parts for their own fleet of Bradley vehicles in desperate need of repair.
Yeah, it was probably those terrorists. It was a bunch of kids.
It was just terrorists. No, terrorists are widely known to only boost Toyota trucks.
Yeah, no. Oh, that's so funny that they tried to tell. Yeah, no, a bunch of terrorists snuck onto our base. Didn't do anything except they
except joyriding our Bradleys.
Yeah, they stripped down our Bradleys like a chop shop in Detroit.
Oh my God!
Woodpit, you're right. Tim took them.
Is Wendy a wood?
I tried to Google. I couldn't find a decent picture. I would say no.
Really? You think she's a no? She's a no.
I will say I don't typically play this game with living women.
I mean, all dead women are a no.
I don't know,
because they're dead.
I don't know.
I mean, how many dead women would you?
Gee.
Like, how long? How long is the... I mean, like, what's the timeline post-death that you could say there's still a wood?
5 years.
Minutes. No way. 5 years. Mere minutes. Well, I guess we know Hudson's fetish. I don't know. I mean, maybe for the story, she certainly can spin a yarn,
Yeah, her next book is going to be about the radicalization of Capitalisimo and her role in it.
He said I was a wood, meaning yeah. So where am I? Oh yeah. The commander of one Bradley company poised along the Saudi border told reporters that theirs was a destruction mission expected to result in both extraordinary violence and extensive American casualties. McVeigh later said that they were the Army's sacrificial lambs, meant to draw enemy fire. One sergeant described what many men in McVeigh's unit recalled, namely commanding officers' warnings that many of them, the majority even, would not survive the ground war's initial assault.
It's great for morale.
Yeah, this is amazing, right? McVeigh got the Bronze Star because when we started the battle, his track was the third one to cross through. We weren't really the advanced forces. We were the guinea pigs they used. They sent us out to test the artillery on the other side, that along with everything else, we were the breach element. The chaplain came up to us and said, well, out of the whole unit, 90% of yous ain't supposed to be here today talking to me. That's a great thing to hear from your chaplain. They told us we were supposed to be dead. The Bradley units were not the only sitting ducks and sacrificial lambs. On February 9th, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev expressed that coalition actions in the Gulf exceeded the UN mandate and attempted to mediate by holding discussions with Saddam Hussein in Baghdad. On February 11th, President Bush benevolently announced that neither he nor other coalition leaders were eager to initiate a ground war. 2 days later, in the early hours of February 13, U.S. stealth fighters dropped a 2,000-pound penetration bomb on a public shelter at Al Amaria, killing anywhere from 300 to 15,000, or 1,500, not 15,000, Iraqi civilians, mostly women and children. Journalist John Simpson described the gruesome carnage rescue workers found there, including bodies fused together so that they formed entire blocks of flesh.
No, that's just how Iraqis look.
That's just a layer of melted human fat an inch deep lying on the surface of the water, pumped in by the firemen. Pentagon spokesman eventually admitted they had mistakenly identified it as an underground Iraqi military command center. Nevertheless, the Pentagon continued to dismiss subsequent Iraqi claims of Allied attacks on civilians as propaganda.
Okay, so, I mean, at least we got better at that. Now we only bomb weddings.
How fucking fat do you need to be? Like, how fat does a group of people need to be for their rendered lipids to form a layer on firefighting water?
No. I think what happened was they were so jam-packed together because they were in a shelter, trying to not get bombed.
Yeah, right.
And you pack them in. Also, EO, I saw her LinkedIn, and you cannot determine from that. I am not gay. I am a married man, sir.
Married to
a woman.
Woman. Okay. All right.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
Yes, a woman.
All right. Well, I just
still living. Still
a live woman. So he says, I'm gonna require proof of life for Hudson's spouse.
Wife, not spouse.
What?
Wife.
Oh yes, wife.
Specifically,
proof of life for Hudson's wife. So or spouse, whatever the case may be. On February 14th, McVeigh wrote Steve and told him he was moving out in 3 hours to secure Iraqi territory. From February 15th until February 20th, coalition forces conducted decoy attacks in hopes of leading Iraqi commanders to think the main Allied attack would occur along the southern border of Kuwait. Although officially coalition ground troops did not breach Iraqi-held territory until February 23rd, 1991. General Schwarzkopf acknowledged later that Green Beret Special Forces units were already behind enemy lines in Iraq. Nearby, 3 miles outside of the border of Iraq, acting in a supporting role, was McVeigh's platoon, along with others in Task Force Iron. On February 15th, psychological warfare units from the 7th Corps blasted recordings of vehicles moving, while the task force, including the 1st Infantry, part of the ruse, moved north and initiated a premature but pivotal attack.
I will say that America is really good at naming things, too, because Task Force Iron goes hard.
I think I said the exact same thing before you joined us. But yes, the naming conventions are absolutely keyno.
I sent you proof of life, by the way.
You sent me proof of life?
Yeah, of Mrs. Hudson. Check your DMs.
Checking my DMs. That looks like a skeleton in a wedding dress. I am gonna have to say that this does not count. And also, it appears that she's joined by a skeleton in a rather dapper tuxedo, complete with top hat.
Yes,
so
no,
I'm going to have to say that
was her father walking down the aisle.
Okay. So she's a skeleton on her father's side.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And on her mother's side?
Actually, I don't know.
Really?
Yeah,
you don't know. But you know it's not skeleton.
Yes, it's definitely not skeleton.
So your wife is mixed race.
Yeah.
Curious.
Weird that you would have a problem with that.
I don't. I just recall several times. Getting some shit. whereas you entered the permanent bone zone and have not been suitably mocked. Although, I see how you would get along with her, given that she is undead. So she's not alive, thus making her a possible wood, but also does not decay because she's purely made of calcium at this point. So it's good. I support you. I support your love life. Congratulations and Mazel Tov. I could tell it was a Jewish skeleton from the skull shape.
Are you doing phrenology on my Google image?
I will always do. Yeah, I do phrenology on all my homies' wives. You know how it is. Alrighty.
During I always find the digressions are the funnest part.
That the digressions are the whole thing, right? During the yet unknown decoy attacks, McVeigh wrote Steve and described engaging in aggressive patrols in enemy territory as part of an indirect fire mission. It would have been way better if McVeigh was like looking for the Iraqi wives. It's just I will cross these enemy lines and I will cuck them. Except maybe cuckoldries just for his buddies. During one mission, he wrote, he was sitting in his Bradley when through his thermals he observed an abandoned Chevy truck near an oil pumping station and noticed the engine still appeared to be hot. Suddenly, just as he saw Iraqis exiting the truck, the tank right next to his dispatched the Chevy, and assumedly its former occupants, and then called in an airstrike. No one could possibly have survived, he opined, and added that his platoon received orders not to speak of the incident. Hours later, during a press briefing that he described to Steve as hilarious, Army spokespeople denied making any incursions into Iraq or firing shots at installations there. Later, though, McVeigh said he had been quite dismayed after the press conference because he hated to hear the Army lie to soldiers or the public.
The Army would never lie.
Why would the Army lie? You think they'd do that? Just cross into a foreign nation and lie? Perhaps another reason for the fear evident in McVeigh's letters was the increasing number of reported friendly fire incidents appearing in the news reports. Although U.S. casualties during Operation Desert Storm were minuscule in comparison to previous wars, A large number of them resulted from friendly fire and anomalous accidents, information about which complained journalists was being withheld by the Pentagon. One such incident occurred on February 16th when a U.S. Apache helicopter fired 2 Hellfire anti-tank missiles and incinerated a Bradley, killing 2 and wounding 6 of the U.S. soldiers inside it. As nearby troops began evacuating their own tanks and running for cover, the Apache continued a barrage of machine gun fire. As the Apache pilot announced on the radio, heard by all, "This bud's for you," killing an additional 6. How do you mistake a Bradley for an enemy vehicle?
It looked a lot like a Russian tank. Especially it was flying one of those American flags on the back.
Like they do. Well, maybe he thought it was one of the 50 Bradleys stolen by terrorists. Wearing bead shoes, also stolen by terrorists.
Well, no, and the thing is, they were driving towards Iraq. So either the helicopter pilot either A, thought that it was an American vehicle and just wanted to kill a bunch of people, or B, he was shooting retreating Iraqis.
Right. Which, I mean, to be fair, it's probably the average case of shooting Iraqis.
Yeah, those guys love to retreat.
They fucking love retreating. According to Stickney, McVeigh was horrified after hearing this on the radio, as his unit had been within 3 miles of the incident. But he told his biographers that he only learned the true account of the incident months later. At the time, he said, they were informed that the Bradley had been the target of an unexpected attack by Iraqi hitmen, and said, "It's so weird."
Put out a bunch of Iraqis in Italian suits.
Yeah,
they start beating it with a baseball bat.
They just like get into the Bradley, saying they're gonna go get some good gabagool, and then they garroted everyone inside.
They bring it into the back, and they tell the Bradley it's gonna get made, only to shoot it in the head.
Exactly.
They shot him in the face, so his mother couldn't give him an open casket funeral.
Or just put him in the front seat and ice pick to the base of the skull, from the back seat.
How do you properly garrote a Bradley fighting vehicle?
Real big, probably like
right around the turret,
like a low E string from a really big piano.
But like around the turret, or
around the no, you do it around the neck of the Bradley fighting vehicle.
That's the turret.
No,
between where the turret.
No. They added a neck. It's part of the committee. They were like, it's got to have a neck.
Yeah. How are we going to properly garrote?
How's it going to turn its head?
A giant giraffe.
All right. And said that in a moment he thought, there's another reason to hate the Iraqi ragheads. In a letter to Steve on February 18th, 2 days after the incident, he declared that if Steve could see the multiple launch rocket system, MLRS, his dick would get hard, and went on to discuss a friendly fire kill.
Do you think Steve writes back?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is it? Well, maybe McVeigh didn't keep those letters. Steve is keeping the letters. That's how he's
all right, I'm going to need to start collecting evidence. This guy's going to do something someday.
Yeah, exactly. And went on to discuss a friendly fire kill. He acknowledged to his attorneys that within the first few hours of the ground war, his platoon did receive friendly artillery fire that left him feeling extremely helpless, describing it as random death from above. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of how it goes.
I mean, extrapolate that out. How do you think the Iraqis feel?
Going to bed. Good night, Ryan Gosling.
Good night, Ryan Gosling.
Thank you for joining us.
He is our sleepiest soldier.
Our sleepiest, literally me. Sorry. And what did you say, Hudson?
No, I was wondering, like, how do you think the Iraqis felt, Tim, with random death from above?
Well, I mean, he wanted them dead, so of course he hoped that they felt the same or worse. On February 17th, 1991, President Bush announced that Iraq's invasion of Kuwait would end very, very soon. Reportedly, the air war alone had resulted in approximately 100,000 Iraqi deaths. That's a lot of planes. On February 22nd, as thousands of tanks and 250,000 U.S. troops sat poised on the Saudi-Iraq border. Bradley vehicles and Abrams tanks stretched for miles as Apache helicopters from the 101st Airborne flew overhead, shaking the earth and turning night into day in what was the largest helicopter invasion in history. The Apaches continually bombarded the Iraqi army, scattering them as coalition ground troops pursued them, thinning out and annihilating Iraqi divisions in a desert orgy of violence. On Friday, February 21st...
That sounds like a festival that Curtis Yarvin would attend.
Desert orgy of violence? No, he what do you mean? He constantly says that violence is not an option. Right. You know? Desert orgy, though, that is, of course, just Burning Man, and we know old Moldbug does love him some Burning Man.
Burning Man? I thought that's what happened on that highway in Iraq.
Yeah, we're getting to that. Oh,
sorry. Spoiler alert, guys.
Spoiler alert.
We did a couple of war crime marinos.
Mentioned it multiple times. All right. Let's see. On Friday, February 21st, 1991, Bush publicly warned that Iraq had 1 week to vacate Kuwait. And the next day, Iraqis reportedly set fire to an additional 950 Kuwaiti oil wells.
That'll show him.
Thanks.
Hey, somebody's got to clean this up, you know.
Yeah, but they're just Kuwaitis. The ground war. On the evening of Saturday, February 23rd, 1991, networks interrupted regular television broadcasts to announce breaking news. The Persian Gulf ground war, Operation Desert Storm, had officially begun. George Bush Sr. declared, "The liberation of Kuwait has entered the final phase," and Defense Secretary Dick Cheney issued a brownout, suspending media briefings for nearly 24 hours, citing the need to maintain operational security.
We're going to have a brownout.
Yeah, we're going to have a brownout. We're not going to talk to any of you fucking idiots.
Not because I had my third heart attack.
How many heart attacks has he had by now?
Like 4, I think.
How many of them were his own heart?
1. He's had 2 heart replacements.
Wow. Dude's just slinging
when you're Dick Cheney, they'll try and keep you alive forever.
When you're Dick Cheney, they let you do it.
And by it, we mean war crimes.
We mean get as many hearts as you need. I mean, he's probably just got like extras sitting around, right? You know, like between the...
Did you? Okay, another tangent. There was a Comedy Central show in the early 2000s called Lil Bush.
Right.
Did you ever see that?
I never watched it.
So the Dick Cheney character was like, okay, there's a cartoon trope. I don't know who started it. It might have been Boomhauer, but basically it's the character that doesn't speak a legible language, but everybody understands.
Okay.
Maybe Kenny from South Park started, but I feel like there's some
definitely pre-existed that, but go on.
Right. But anyway, right. So Dick Cheney was
he just growled.
Little Cheney in the show, he was called. He'd go rah, 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 brain freeze, rah, rah. Like just anybody else remember
Lil Bush?
The
short-lived
I think it really only it did 2 seasons, and it's one of those shows from Comedy Central that just they leaned on South Park and The Daily Show for like a decade plus, and just like tried to recreate that magic with whatever shit that they could fling at the wall.
Dude, yeah. Obviously John Leibowitz is a shit lib, but I don't hate anyone.
So was I in the early 2000s. So
sure, yeah, and I mean I still don't hate anyone who dunks on neocons. So like, it was fine. He was good when he was doing that. But yeah, fucking Trevor Noah like wasn't even funny as a shit lib.
No.
No,
he was so unfunny that they hired Jon Stewart back.
Right, exactly. And I mean, God, whatever. Yeah, no one has fallen farther than Colbert though. So because his non-political humor was funnier on the Colbert Report than his like middle of the road like gay jack off shill stuff.
He was also just like
the Tonight Show,
a decently funny sketch comedian before he ever got into politics. There was.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see the Dana Carvey show, or at least
he was a voice on the Venture Brothers?
Yes. Oh my God. He was.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was the Dana Carvey show in the 90s was a sketch comedy show, a little raunchier than what do you call it? Than Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And both Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert were featured players on it. There's a really good documentary on it on Peacock, I think, called I forget what it was called.
Called When Dana Carvey Had a Career.
Yeah. Bartholomew the Red, you're right. Colbert was very funny, and he did sell his soul. And I checked her LinkedIn, and I saw the picture, and she has nice eyes, but that's all you can really see. So I don't know what you people are seeing.
Yeah, Bartholomew the Red. Colbert is actually funny. He's just sold his soul. Yeah, I mean, you know, he had a career. Like they should have just let Conan take over the Tonight Show. Actually, the Tonight Show is just kind of where comedy goes to die, right? Like anyone gets that gig, and it's just been shit for years.
So the thing about that too is, I forget why I was.
There's got to be a permanent bureaucracy behind the scenes at the Tonight Show that makes jokes unfunny.
When Jay Leno was the host, right? It was the Tonight Show he was the host of, correct?
What, Jay Leno? Yeah.
So when he was the host, he would do. His whole thing was all his jokes had to be middle of the road, lowest common denominator.
Sure.
And that's why people gave him a lot of shit. Apparently, he's very, very funny, but most of it just never made it to air.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jay Leno's stand-up is great. It's a shame that he's now a gambling addict who's getting beat up by the mob, or whatever happened to him. There's no in the news this week. He allegedly fell down a hill outside at like a Holiday Inn. Despite being worth $500 million, staying at the shittiest fucking hotel he could find.
Has 12 garages full of cars. That's where all his money is.
Dude, his car collection is fucking fire.
It's so honestly good. One of the like. Okay, so I wrote an article for the OGC this week. I submitted it. I don't know if they're going to publish it about the Hess toy truck.
Okay, yeah. And classic.
It's 60 years old this year.
It's like a die cast enameled toy truck, right?
It's not. No. It's plastic. It's been plastic since the 80s, I think. But yeah, it was metal before that, and okay. It's like it's the best toy truck ever built, right? Okay. But in it, I talked about how men like to collect things, and Jay Leno's car garage is just, like, if I had money, I would just be Jay Leno.
What would you do if you had more money than you knew what to do? I'd probably be Jay Leno. You transition.
I would get chin surgery.
You transition to Jay Leno. No, when he dies, bet you those cars are going to go into the Jay Leno Automotive Museum. I bet you that's what he's going to do.
I bet he builds a giant pyramid and puts all the cars in there, and that becomes the museum.
I mean, dude, that would be sick. I hope he does, because those shows that he did were legitimately good, and that's something everyone can enjoy. You know what? I like Fed posting. I'm a absolute dyed in the wool fucking maniac over here, whose political opinions do not belong in polite society. The world I wish to create could not contain someone like me. But the Jay Leno car shows are something that I can talk about with with like progressives, and we can not hate each other about it. Like, so yeah, that is the last bastion of America.
Several topics that I can bring up.
Yeah. All right. So where are we? Oh yeah. Oh God. This is while we're still on this tangent. Remember the Vax scene from Colbert? Okay. So speaking on the Vaxes and John Leibowitz while we're at it, when he went on when Jon Stewart went on the Tonight Show, when it was still verboten to talk about the lab leak origins of
John
which is where it came from.
Right.
Totally confirmed now, YouTube. It's completely confirmed and acknowledged that it was a lab leak. Like that the visible discomfort of Stephen Colbert was amazing. And I can't fully hate Jon Stewart because of that. So
yeah, it's, I don't know.
Credit where it's due. Hey, you know what?
I like him much more than I like, say, Trevor Noah or John Oliver or what's that one dude's name who does Bill Maher.
John Oliver's the worst, and Bill Maher's the worst because he's such a fucking sued. Bill Maher is a sued. John Oliver is actually just the lowest tier. But anyway, back to the book we're supposed to be reading, or I'm supposed to be reading.
Yeah, get back to reading Wagey.
Yeah. Also, I put in another 3 milligrams in just now, so we're gonna see if I get high again. But I guarantee you, I will not be yawning.
Here's hoping.
I'm on combat drugs. All right. On the evening. Nicotine is a addictive chemical, I'm told. So you know.
That's why I put another in.
That's why I put another in after not having a good time earlier today. I'm immediately addicted.
Is disgusting. Give me another.
All right. The ground war. On the evening of Saturday, February 23rd, 1991, networks interrupted regular television broadcasts to announce breaking news. The Persian Gulf ground war, Operation Desert Storm, had officially begun. Wait, I already read this, didn't I?
That's fine. Keep going.
Whatever. George Bush Sr. declared the liberation of Kuwait has entered the final phase, and Defense Secretary Dick Cheney, here we go, issued a brownout, suspending, etc., citing the need to maintain operational security. For media consumers, the motives of the war were already clear. Evil Iraqis were rounding up, torturing, and executing Kuwaitis. The next day, on Saturday, February 24th, in what was called the most sweeping armored attack since World War II, over 200,000 Allied troops, including 150,000 U.S. soldiers, entered Iraq and Iraqi-occupied Kuwait. Schwarzkopf promised that the Iraqi army would be pursued vigorously. We're going to go around, over, through, on top, underneath, any other way, double penetration, DV, we're going to pursue them any way it takes to get them out of Kuwait. Schwarzkopf's Operation Desert Saber.
My German might be a little off, but Schwarzkopf, I believe, means blackhead. So it would only take one Bior strip to get rid of old Storm and Norman.
It could be Schwanzkopf? Or who was the
Scheisskopf.
Scheisskopf. Yeah, it was Scheisskopf. Well, Schwanzkopf is cockhead. Although I think Schwanz is actually Yiddish. What was the what was the guy in Catch 22?
That's Scheisskopf, shithead.
Oh yeah, Scheisskopf. That's right. Yeah, you are correct.
Previously covered on Cannon Fodder, a much better podcast than Tukey's Mag.
Well, Tukey's Mag is not a podcast. It's a channel that contains multiple podcasts, of which is the Sidebar and your very own Library of Mass Destruction that you're listening to right now. You should go check out the Sidebar. It's a better podcast than the Cannon Fodder, hosted by T.R. Hudson. Let's see here. Schwarzkopf's Operation Desert Saber called for a Hail Mary flank strategy that hinged upon the 7 Corps' main effort. Task Force Iron.
They took one name and they're like, all right, we got to make everything that thing. Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Desert Saber.
I kind of like it. You know, it keeps it in order, right? and they're all it's always an S word,
right?
You know what I mean?
Shit.
Desert shit. This is where we mop up all of that fucking oil that the Iraqis released. Or I mean, fuck, it could have been us. Who the fuck knows?
The marketing department at the Pentagon was like, all right, we got to do synergy, so everything's got to be named the same.
No, I mean, can you say that's bad?
No, right? I just think it's interesting because we dropped that.
It makes it Kino. It does make it Kino. Well, I mean, I think the fact is that all of these operations had distinct objectives, and everything that we've done since has been open-ended. Like,
yeah, for the next war with Iran that we're definitely going to have, everything should be we should do it all Viking-like, right? Where we call it like jungle warfare, even though we're going to fight in the desert, Greenland, Iceland kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Just it's opposite day.
Right.
We do Bizarro.
Just to confuse them. They're like, no, this is Jungle Storm. So clearly they're not going to invade us.
Got it. Yeah. Operation. You could name it after people who invaded Persia. Famous victories over Persia. That would be that would be the coolest way to do it.
Operation 300.
Operation Thermopylae. I mean, that would tell me Operation Thermopylae would not be sick. Right?
I would definitely go see a Mark Wahlberg movie called Operation Thermopylae.
Like, that would be great. I don't want us to invade Iraq.
Cinematic universe.
I don't want us I don't want us to invade Iran. I think we shouldn't. I think it's super dumb. But
I'm glad you're having such a good time.
Operation Alexander as well.
Operation Golgotha.
What was that? That wasn't a battle over the Persians. That
was the first victory that Alexander had over the Persians.
Oh, really? They fought him at Golgotha? Interesting. Golgotha. I mean, I just, I would think of the death of Christ.
What am I thinking of then? Gargamella.
Gargamel is the villain in the Smurfs.
Damn, no, I know Gargamel. Google machine, tell me what
you're thinking of. Gargamella.
Thank you, Bartholomew.
That's close to Gargamel.
Yeah,
I forgive you.
Dude, sometimes I feel like Alex Jones.
Dude, that has got to be a great feeling.
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah.
Globalists.
I'm Bill Hicks. Fuck, I said it. All right. Desert Saber called for a Hail Mary flank strategy that hinged upon the 7 Corps' main effort, Task Force Iron, a crucial component of which was the 1st Mechanized Infantry Division.
Now I kind of hope we go to war with Iran just so we can get some cool names.
Absolutely not worth it.
Like one good movie.
The objective, to cross into Kuwait, head northeast towards Kuwait City and flank and cut off retreating Iraqi units along the way, clearing a passage through the desert for spearheading Marines approaching from the south. The Iraqi front line, Saddam's line in the sand, or line of death, was said to be fortified with deep minefields and oil field trenches intended to burst into a deadly inferno. According to one commanding general of the task force, the strategy was to maintain a rapid tempo, thus not giving Iraqis time to react until it was too late and they were either dead or captured. A blitzkrieg, an actual blitzkrieg. That is the.
Oh yeah, in the 1970s, every war college was putting out papers about. That's one of the reasons why the U.S. Army tried very hard to rehabilitate the Wehrmacht, because they wanted to use blitzkrieg tactics going forward.
I mean, it fucking worked. And also it worked here because, as we're about to find out, the line of death did not work, just like the Maginot line in France did not work. So
yeah, it turns out that static warfare requires at least a static air. There cannot be air supremacy one way or the other.
Exactly. Heavy aerial bombardment and the earlier interventions of Marines, paratroopers, psychological warfare, and special forces units had helped to soften the border and flush out Iraqi troops who once the ground war started, began retreating south, only to be met with tanks and Bradley vehicles. According to one fighter-bomber squadron commander, the ensuing massive Iraqi retreat was inevitable, as their only other option was to attempt to hold their position and get killed in their holes. Despite the best laid plans,
Operation Die in a Hole.
Operation Die in a Hole. What did the Iraqis mean by this? Planners anticipated high casualty rates in the breaching operation and predicted the decommissioning of the most forward-moving units for several days after the initial battle.
It's really funny, too, because Saddam didn't learn his lesson, and we found him in a hole.
Yeah, he did not die in that hole, though. That is not
Operation hide behind a rock or something in your hole.
Yes. Although that diagram of the spider hole was fucking wild.
Yeah, like, that's got to be one of the earliest internet memes.
Yes. In June 1995, weeks after his arrest, McVeigh gave the Jones team his first and perhaps only hour-by-hour detailed account of his experiences during the Gulf War. His recollections of events that occurred from February 23rd to February 26th tended to blend, as if, for him, it had been one long, strange, and terrifying day, whose exact details are hard to know. He described the Gulf War to his father and sister as one long, somewhat boring drive in the desert. He claimed to his biographers that even as they approached the Iraqi front line, as he felt the ground trembling underneath him, he was still able to sleep, and referring to the Ryder truck bomb used in Oklahoma, remarked that after this, sleeping on the back of a 7,000-pound bomb is no big deal. Prior to making these claims, though, he described to his attorney how, on the eve of the ground assault, while they were still about 10 miles outside of the Iraqi border, he'd experienced terror for the first time in his life. He woke at 2:30 in the morning to find the desert shaking and rockets going off. His entire body began to shake from the anxiety, and he confessed to more than one person that he did not think they would survive.
Fucking
Imagine the smell.
Anxiety.
Imagine the smell of all of these dudes camped out inside of a Bradley, like sweating and shaking in their boots.
Definitely at least one person shit their pants in terror.
100%.
And made the drive unbearable for everybody else.
Oh my God. Well, and the other thing is, what do you fucking do? You know, you're in that situation. You're like, well,
we threw him out the back because the door fell off. So we could do that.
The one upside of the door falling off was that all of our shit-caked BDUs,
out. The Iraqis knew we were coming. They smelled our brave shit.
Yep. Although MREs, you being
that
someone who probably ate more of those, they do bind you up, don't they?
Yes, I remember eating MREs for even a couple of days. You will be backed up for a while.
Yeah, you know what?
They tell you that the gum is a laxative. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, Tim dreaming sweet dreams of fertilizer.
He really should have just opened a country store, and he would have been so happy.
It would have been fine. Yeah, exactly. You know, maybe the experience inside the Bradley is what made him start thinking about fertilizer so much. Maybe that was the real Gulf War syndrome. That was it. Everyone crop dusting each other. In the first unofficial biography of Tim McVeigh, All American Monster, Brandon Stickney wrote that as McVeigh waited for the action to begin, he thought about his role until it scared him. McVeigh was in charge of a group that might not make it out alive. An article in the New York Times quoted a soldier with McVeigh who said, the night before the war kicked off, McVeigh was saying how he was scared because we were going to be part of the first wave. He was scared we weren't going to come out of it. Maybe we would get shot, blown up. He was just concerned. I was feeling the same way, but most people didn't express it. Playboy also quoted this same soldier as saying, we were in the desert sleeping on the sand, and he really thought we were going to die. He was worried that we would be killed by our own helicopters or tanks. Other soldiers with him confirmed this, saying that McVeigh was afraid, but added that what he feared the most was not enemy fire, but friendly fire from above, or even being buried alive by U.S. tanks. Yeah, that's fucked up. You'd think that there would be fewer friendly fire incidences. Like, you'd think that would be easier to deal with.
Yeah, no,
right?
especially I think back then. No, I guess they didn't have the IR strobes yet, but they were trying to make everything quote unquote smart.
Yeah.
I don't know when Blue Force Tracker started. It might have been him. It might have been then.
Explain to me what that is.
The Blue Force Tracker is a computer program. Basically, it's like a little, it's like a little radio signal or whatever that sends a ping to airplanes flying above that track your movements, basically, at least vehicle to vehicle.
So it's like friend and enemy flags, right?
Yeah, it's more advanced now. Now you can paint enemy targets as enemies. Back then, this was just like, hey, don't shoot me. I'm on your side.
Do not kill me, please.
The please is important.
The please is because it's like, well, you're being off the grid and not wanting
Bartholomew the Red, best MRE, worst MRE. So I mean, the objective worst MRE ever produced. This was before my time. Like they actually stopped making it. It was so horrible. Was the egg omelet or the cheese and egg omelet? Yeah, horrible. I've heard stories about it. In my time, the worst was probably the best, honestly, because it had like the best stuff in it and it wasn't bad. Was the vegetable lasagna? Like it's like a vegetarian lasagna, but it had the best candy in it. You got Skittles and some other stuff that was really good.
Nice.
The worst one I can remember. I mean, once you eat
RFK enraged at the mention of Red 40.
I don't remember the worst one, but like objectively all time, the worst MRE was the omelet.
Interesting. I've had a couple MREs, just to try them. But
for that shelter you're building, right?
Right. But yeah, I think I had like the chili or something, and it was fine.
Oh,
it was like
actually, chili mac was a banger, and that also came, I think, with M&Ms.
It's just like whatever was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like
well, the thing about MREs too
chili,
is
whatever.
It's a whole thing. So you get a main meal, you get a side, you get jalapeno cheese spread with a pretty decent biscuit actually, and it's supposed to be something like not 2,000. I think altogether it's like 5,000 calories. It's supposed to keep you going for a while.
Jesus, yeah, that's a shitload. No wonder. No wonder everyone's awesome. so tubby in the military. They gotta. I mean, yeah, I guess you can't really make them any less, right? Because otherwise you end up with your troops starving, which is significantly worse than them being a little chunky. So, let's see. Making matters worse, his commanding officer, Lieutenant Jesus Angel Rodriguez, amazing, name not changed apparently, by all accounts terrified himself, made the decision to transfer McVeigh into his Bradley, thereby separating him from the crew he had trained with for 3 years. The stated primary objective for forming the cohort units was the prevention of psychological breakdown in battle by building cohesion and trust among fellow soldiers. For McVeigh, who thrived on his training and regimentation, Lieutenant Rodriguez's decision must have seemed unthinkable and could not have calmed his already fraying nerves. Mark Ham wrote about the wild drives through the desert with McVeigh at the turret and Roger Barnett at the wheel, but Barnett himself and several other sources described a very different scenario. We were the top gunning team. I was the top driver. McVeigh was the top gunner. And Sergeant Albert Warnament, he was the top Bradley commander. When we got to Saudi Arabia, we were on the same track. And then our lieutenant, he took McVeigh over to his track. But our lieutenant, he wasn't worth a crap. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, that's what you should expect from
Lieutenant. You're going back.
Lieutenant, you are going back. I mean, you'd have to imagine though, maybe Rodriguez wasn't bad, but you would expect that a group who was so cohesive, would think that they were the best and wanted to stay together.
Right.
So,
And like even a group that, even if these guys hadn't been together since boot camp, the whole thing of training, doing the workup and training together every single day, knowing each other's jobs and knowing how, say, the driver acts or say the main gunner acts, like it is a well-oiled machine that you do not want to fuck with.
right. Yeah, that seems that definitely seems like it would be the case.
It'd be like, to use a sports analogy, it'd be like taking Patrick Mahomes and putting him on the Jets.
Hey, some guys just got to secure the bag, All right. Indeed, a number of incidents involving Lieutenant Rodriguez compounded the fears and confusion of many others in the unit. The evening before the ground war, as they headed balls to the wall towards Safwan, McVeigh tried to catch some sleep in the moving Bradley and, like the previous evening, found this difficult to do. He woke suddenly only to find Rodriguez, who was supposed to be acting as lookout, asleep. At the exact moment McVeigh spotted a landmine directly in front of them, which they were about to hit. He yelled at the driver, who swerved out of the way, waking Lieutenant Rodriguez up. Yeah, that's a pretty big fuck up.
You woke him up?
Oh, yeah.
You don't wake up the lieutenant. Pissed.
You woke up the lieutenant. Ay caramba, Lieutenant Rodriguez was heard to exclaim. They did appear accident-prone. During one particularly chaotic moment, Sergeant First Class Dutton stepped on a landmine. Sergeant Robinson remembered, "We were sitting up at night, and they told Dutton to go out and check the bunkers just to make sure there was no Iraqis and destroy any equipment that was in there. Well, he blew himself up in the process with his own weapon." Lieutenant Rodriguez testified later that McVeigh saved Robinson from bleeding to death by disobeying Rodriguez's order to pull out the shrapnel. McVeigh, who had specialized medic training, feared the screaming Robinson was bleeding too profusely and instead bandaged the wound and calmed him down.
How stupid does this guy is? Like, yeah, everybody knows you don't pull out you don't ever pull out, but you don't
pull out.
You don't pull out shrapnel or glass from a bleeding wound. It's helping to seal the wound.
Yeah, I mean, I would not particularly have an opinion one way or the other, not having been trained as a medic, but that does make sense that you wouldn't want to remove it until you were actually in a medical facility. But yeah, the Jones team later noted recurring themes throughout the stories McVeigh and others told them about the experience in the Gulf War. Several had described a deep lack of confidence in their commanders and comrades, which they attributed to inexperience, poor training, and leadership, and a general sense of being ill-equipped and ill-prepared for what they were facing. Also, it probably didn't help that they were told that 90% of them were going to fucking die.
You're all going to die, and we're going to make sure of it by putting this asshole in charge.
I am your lieutenant.
Yo soy el lieutenant.
I have to have a siesta.
I'm so sleepy. Oh, don't drive over the line, my man.
I'm so sleepy, man. I'm so sleepy. You do it.
Hey, cabron, you woke me up.
You should take out the shrapnel.
Sí, sí.
Maybe there's something good in there.
Sí, trabajo. Sí, invade Iraq. Sí.
Let's see. Many also recalled, however, that during this frightful experience, McVeigh's presence helped to calm them. Bad Company's driver said Sergeant McVeigh was the one you wanted in the foxhole with you. Alan Smith, also in McVeigh's Bradley, said he never felt safe when Tim left the vehicle. Sometimes, fearing his comrades might intentionally or accidentally shoot him, and that out of the entire company, he trusted McVeigh alone.
They're just shooting guys.
Yeah. McVeigh said he was under a tremendous amount of pressure and felt responsible for the men in his Bradley as well as those in the tanks directly behind him. People were going nuts. During one Scud attack alert, a man in the back of McVeigh's Bradley, sitting directly above the ammunition storage and unable to see outside, began crying, freaking out and refused to take his gas mask off. At some point, a soldier pulled out a gun and demanded that unless he could talk to a major, he would kill himself. The major, in fear for his life, refused to talk to the soldier, so Sergeant McVeigh requested permission to stay and talk him down. Our request the major denied.
Oof. This is the first time the major is mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't have the major's name. Didn't even mention it.
No, but I just mean because later on there's the major.
Oh, right. Mr. West. The high tech.
No. Oh, what? Do you think Jolly West was the major? No.
I thought Jolly West was a major.
No. The major was just his handler.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
That would be some really weird, like Manchurian. Now I kind of want that to be the case, but I don't think it is.
That'd be wild. Yeah. I took the Zin. I just took the Zin out. I'm feeling it can't. Yeah.
Kind of woozy.
I'm gonna throw out the rest of these. Fucking things. I can't handle this. Yeah, nicotine, not for me. I fucking love cigars, but Jesus Christ, I need like a 0.5 milligram Zin or something.
Baby's first Zin.
Yeah, man. Never smoked cigarettes. I do not enjoy that particular experience. Pipes and cigars are great.
Yeah,
but in the weeks prior to the start of the ground war, reports about Iraqi and coalition POWs regularly appeared in the news. In the final weeks of January 1991, U.S. military police had begun building facilities to house up to 20,000 Iraqi POWs and defectors. Meanwhile, coalition spokespeople accused Iraq of violating the Geneva Protocols in their treatment of Allied POW. Wow. That is
No, I just thought of a really funny thing that the Mexican lieutenant could have done to their Bradley, where he put hydraulics in.
No, you make it a lowrider and put in the hydraulics and make it play La Cucaracha on the
horn. The last thing an Iraqi hears before he gets run over.
Yes. A number of international protocols existed establishing standards for the humane treatment of enemy and civilian POWs, not the least of which was the 1949 Geneva Convention. These protocols prohibited the torture, use of chemical weapons, and killing of both enemy and civilian prisoners, as well as exposing them to live fire in combat zones. I can't help but think back a couple pages ago where they were using chemical weapons on POWs.
Well, you have to punish them for the crime of surrendering.
Yes. How dare you not fight back and die
We have spent billions of dollars for these smart weapons, and somebody's got to die.
Look, yeah, we gotta keep the defense contractors busy, so we have to use these munitions. McVeigh admitted that he was terrified even before leaving the neutral zone and crossing into Iraq, and had decided that if he was going to die, he would kill as many Iraqis as he could. In a letter written to Steve dated February 23rd, 1991, day one of the ground war, he complained that Geneva Convention rules regulating the treatment of POWs would end up getting everybody killed. Therefore, he wrote, I've made up my mind. No prisoners. It may be on my conscience for years, and I may be accused of killing defenseless people.
Oh.
But when push comes to shove, and my life, along with the lives of everyone in my vehicle, is on the line, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Oh, Tim. I was just thinking, like, wow,
literary foreshadowing.
This guy is like a legit war hero. Too bad it didn't work out.
It did not work out, yeah. On February 24th, while still in the neutral zone between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, Task Force Iron finally met with the Iraqi army. Rules of engagement dictated enemy troops be given the chance to surrender rather than be killed. Although the news brownout complicated attempts to construct an accurate picture of the early hours of the ground war, news outlets nonetheless described disheveled and disarmed Iraqi prisoners shambling single file across the desert, with smoky oil fires smudging along the skies of eastern Kuwait. Indeed, the Iraqis encountered by Allied forces were not wild-eyed, rag-headed terrorists, torturers, and murderers. Rather, many had open sores, appeared covered in lice, and were starving, demoralized, poorly trained, inadequately armed, or completely unarmed, and in the process of deserting or surrendering.
We
According
shot
to
them because they gave us the ick.
Well, I mean, lice. I mean, what's the, lice are pretty gross. Did you get lice when you were in
No.
Hudson? You ever get
No.
lice?
I did have bed bugs in my apartment in New York.
Gross.
Yeah, no, that was not a fun 3 months.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
My fucking roommate.
Your roommate was a bed bug?
No. Yes, Gregor's. I was roommates with Gregor Samsa.
Perfect.
And one day he just infested the whole apartment with his friends.
My children. Let's see.
But yeah, no, never had lice, luckily.
According to reports, very often the elite Iraqi Republican Guard units stood behind Iraqi soldiers confined to holes in trenches in order to prevent them from deserting. The commander of one U.S. field hospital said the Iraqi POWs were terrified of airplanes, sometimes curling up into fetal positions upon hearing them, while others suffered from acute shell shock or combat stress. Some news outlets reported that Iraqi soldiers were extremely happy upon their capture. Many commanders felt overwhelmed by their inability to care for the thousands of Iraqi POWs and feared their presence would disrupt or impede the advance. According to what?
Sorry, I'm speaking Arab.
According to McVeigh, it was on the first day of the ground war, heading north toward Safwan, that he first encountered surrendering Iraqis in a trench. After he fired at the trench, what seemed like thousands of Iraqis emerged waving white surrender flags.
Much like bedbugs.
The voluntary POWs caused an extraordinary amount of tension as U.S. troops didn't know what to do with them, and there were an insufficient number of interpreters to make sense of it all. On this occasion, he said, feeling overwhelmed, U.S. soldiers ordered the Iraqis to the rear and to keep walking. You stupid fucking Iraqis. We don't have time to deal with hostages right now.
We were hoping that you guys would just die bravely instead of surrendering like smart cowards.
Yes. McVeigh told, well, I mean, to be real, it seems like, it seems like they probably were not going to win that one. Anyway. McVeigh told the Jones team that when he first witnessed the surrendering Iraqis looking up at the huge guns pointed at them, he began to realize the gap between what the army taught him about war and the reality of war, as well as the people who fight them. For the first time, he felt sympathy for those he was supposed to kill. The Iraqis were not evil, as the media and military told him. They were pathetic, scared, hungry, and confused. His encounters with them were so visceral, he could literally smell from a mile away our guys who had patted down the surrendering Iraqis.
Imagine the smell. After the initial aerial assaults, the conflict had basically become a war with civilians with guns. As soon as the Americans came upon the Iraqis, they surrendered. The narratives of other men with him in the Gulf echo McVeigh's, who said that the army had not properly trained them to face the enemy they found in Iraq. One cohort, Royal Witcher. Wow. Amazing. Member. Okay, I was thinking that the cohort was called Royal Witcher.
Well, it's a cohort member. Yeah.
Got it.
One cohort, Royal Witcher. Did not mention this being a name change, so wow. Said that of all his experiences in the Gulf, the hardest to deal with were surrendering Iraqis. Ray Barnes described the scene. That first day when it went from Desert Shield to Desert Storm, as we were making our way to and across the border, all of a sudden there was an exodus. It was just like 5,000 people. They were walking to surrender. They were giving up. I don't think any of them had a gun with them. Well, yes, some of them had guns, but they didn't have ammo, or they just had blanks. They were so hungry and dehydrated. They offered stacks of money to the officers for a bottle of water.
So we shot them.
Offering bricks of hash for water, because there it's legal to smoke hash. Can't drink whiskey, but can smoke hash. After comparing all the stories told to them by McVeigh's fellow soldiers, the Jones team found that their interactions with Iraqis, particularly those killed later, had left a profound mark on all those interviewed. One memo observed, they did not encounter the enemy which they expected, an enemy they could keep at arm's length, but rather saw the humanity and frailty of the people they were required to kill. In June 1997, weeks after his arrest, McVeigh told members of his legal team that this newfound feeling of sympathy for the Iraqis made what happened later a lot worse. What happened later depends on whom you ask, when you ask, and sometimes why you ask it. After the Oklahoma bombing, news reports described McVeigh firing upon and killing Iraqi soldiers that had been attempting to surrender, an act said to foreshadow and illustrate his later ability to kill without remorse. McVeigh described to his attorneys how, as they breached the Iraqi front lines, 4 Bradleys, including his own, lined up in front of an entrenched Iraqi machine gun bunker. He then fired at the trench from 1,600 meters away, and with one shot, hit his target and observed a red cloud emanate from it.
That's cool.
After he fired several more rounds, everyone in the trenches surrendered.
I'm sorry. 1,600 yards from a machine gun, one shot to the
Pump. Yeah.
Oh, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Was a 20 millimeter gun?
Yeah.
20 millimeter. That's a pretty big round. That's that's like the width of your hand in length, and
it's like a Coke can.
Yeah, it's like half the girth of my cock. It's just like a really big piece of metal to be putting down.
Hey, this is a Christian channel.
This is a Christian channel. Sorry,
mass death.
Sorry, God. You're the one who made it, though, and I'm just the one who has to carry it around.
It's my burden to bear.
It is my burden to bear. Anyways, I've observed the red cloud too. But just at that moment, he observed to his right members of Bravo Company shooting at the surrendering Iraqis, and at that point tried to get Lieutenant Rodriguez to radio over and tell them to stop. He said that only later did he learn that he killed 2 Iraqi soldiers with that one 1,600 meter shot.
Oh, that's even cooler.
Twofer, that's wild. Oh yeah, yes, exactly. The necrophile is the Christian champion.
I am what I am.
I am what I am. Well, Christ did conquer death, and Hudson did something else to it. So he described the incident a bit differently to his biographers a few years later. He said that as they approached a dug-in enemy machine gun nest still over a mile away, Lieutenant Rodriguez ordered him to fire. He instantly saw a flash of light, assumed it was enemy fire, and with the Bradley still moving, began to adjust his sights. As he did so, an Iraqi soldier popped his head up for a split second. McVeigh fired at him, and the man's upper body exploded. His head just disappeared like in a red mist.
Dude, that's again, that's got to really mess with you.
Right.
But
the
America
shot
is really good at making things that kill people.
Yes, it is one of our superpowers as a culture. The shot, he said, also killed another Iraqi soldier standing nearby. Lieutenant Rodriguez ordered him to keep firing, but McVeigh hesitated because he noticed that the rest of the dug-in Iraqis had begun to surrender. But since Lieutenant Rodriguez started screaming at him, he just fired off a few more rounds far off into the desert to appease him. For this, he earned an Army Commendation Medal, and on the accompanying certificate, his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Moreno, noted that McVeigh had inspired others in his company by destroying an enemy machine gun encampment, killing 2 Iraqi soldiers and forcing 30 others to surrender. The incident is one of the few where the accounts of the cohort unit differ. Corroborating this story were the accounts of William Dilley and his commanding officer, First Sergeant Harris. Dilley: Tim shot an Iraqi soldier that he saw. We gave them so much time to give up, and we couldn't wait. So we had to clear the trenches, so we'd go down and put rounds in them. We couldn't leave them and couldn't go by them, so we cleared the trenches. Tim saw one of the guys he shot, and the lieutenant saw it too. I know he did because he said Tim had a confirmed kill. They saw the guy stand up, and Tim hit him, literally, which was a pretty decent shot, you know? That was the only reason Tim talked about it later. He was just there to do his job and was serious about the Army. Harris. Tim did well in the Gulf. We all did. We went to the battle expecting significant American losses, up to 70%, going up against the fourth largest army in the world. And so there was a good deal of fear and anxiety when we first crossed the Iraqi lines. But there was little resistance. A few would pop up from their trenches and fire at us, and some of those Iraqis got killed as a result. It really couldn't be helped.
I will say, fact check, actually, his commanding officer could not be First Sergeant Harris because a first sergeant is a non-commissioned officer and therefore could not be in command.
Huh.
Most likely he was the company first sergeant.
Interesting. Yeah. However, according to others, it was McVeigh, not Bravo Company, who had continued to fire at the unarmed POWs. One man told the FBI that McVeigh had bragged on numerous occasions about an Iraqi soldier he killed while in Desert Storm, telling the story of how he'd killed a fucking raghead. Lester Robinson also described an Iraqi man with an AK-47 who seemed to appear out of nowhere and started firing at them. Since Lieutenant Rodriguez was unavailable at the time, McVeigh, feeling the AK-wielding Iraqi posed a threat, took the initiative and naturally shot him, incidentally killing an unarmed man holding a white surrender flag standing close by. James Spencer concurred that McVeigh made the shot, but said the continued fire afterwards came from a different gunner on the tank Spencer himself was in, but did so only after their commander, not Rodriguez, directly ordered them to open fire on surrendering Iraqis. The commander who issued the order, Spencer added apologetically, felt bad about it later. Ray Barnes offered his recollections. A lot of things that people said about him, like him supposedly snipering someone with a 25 Mac at 1,000 yards, I never heard him talk about that. But did he do it? No. After the bombing, the FBI came and hauled me in and questioned me, and the CID come and paid me a visit and picked me up. Hauled me in. They were supposedly investigating possible war crimes with that 1,000-yard headshot. According to the Geneva Convention, that's overkill. That's one of my main gripes. What we're dealing with now with the terrorists, it's a reason a lot of our boys are dying, because we're playing by the rules and the other team isn't. Yeah,
also, I mean, not for nothing. Like, how can that be a war crime, considering that shot is almost impossible to make?
Right. I mean, it's
less of a war crime if he just does it while they're closer to him.
Yeah, or you don't explode their torso, I guess. I don't know. Like, you know,
he got out and he respectfully drowned them in their own blood.
So what's I mean, maybe it's using certain weapons on certain targets. I know that is sometimes a thing, but yeah, I mean, it's a machine gun is it's anti-personnel, right? Like you're not going to try to take a tank out with a Ma Deuce. So
like
what are you supposed to do?
25 millimeter. I mean, that can take out like lightly armored vehicles or non-armored vehicles, but
right. No, for sure. It's just, yeah, like you're only allowed to destroy material with it, but if you kill a person and just a person and don't break something also, then it's not okay. That does seem retarded. Like there's no other way to say that. Garrett Bessler, positioned in the tank directly next to McVeigh at the time, said he heard about the allegations but insisted they were absolutely false, emphasizing Tim wasn't the type to be trying to get that first kill no matter what the cost. He did recall a related incident at an unknown time that caused McVeigh to lose his temper. Bessler said that once Alpha and Bravo Company Bradleys were firing at a particular target for over 2 hours before it dawned on them that they had sufficiently destroyed it. As soon as they stopped, Groups of Iraqis holding their rifles upside down with sheets tied to them appeared, but Bravo opened fire on the Iraqis. Some of them went down, and the others stood back up, and the Bradleys opened fire again. Bessler was not sure how many they killed or even which specific Bradley vehicles fired, but said that later Army officials conducted an investigation into the incident and Bravo's role in it. After returning from the Gulf, Bessler recounted the incident in sworn testimony and even confronted Lieutenant Rodriguez, who denied that he saw it, a claim Bessler thought impossible.
Hey,
Nevertheless,
I never see nothing, man.
I didn't see nothing.
I was sleeping in my truck.
I was in my siesta. Hey, keep firing, SA. I never said that.
I never say. I don't say anything.
I never say nothing. Nevertheless,
Slowpoke Rodriguez.
That's the man. Slowpoke Rodriguez. I probably not.
Gulf War veteran
Slowpoke Rodriguez. Nevertheless, Bessler believed the people responsible for the deaths had been busted and discharged from the Army. While speculative, I offer the possibility that perhaps among the reasons the soldiers' records later went missing were incidents such as this. Not implausible. Yeah.
We can't introduce this evidence. It makes us look really, really bad.
Your Honor, we cannot produce this evidence in discovery because it makes us look bad. McVeigh's friend and fellow cohort, Gordon Blackcloud, recalled the chaotic killing during their combat. It was nice alliteration. It was a Bradley driver. I was a Bradley driver for the first half of the war, and then a gunner. Everybody more or less fired on everybody. We took a lot of prisoners. I know we killed some of them, Iraqis. Everybody had to. My platoon sergeant got hit, and then I got hit in the back, and then the back of the head. Another guy blew off his foot by stepping on a mine. After I got hit, we ran over there to our platoon sergeant and wrapped him up because we were also combat medics. My whole back was bleeding and everything, but I didn't let them take me off until we got done with our platoon sergeant.
In unpublished, Blackcloud is awesome.
He does seem like he's pretty goated. In unpublished letters and conversations with his biographers, McVeigh elaborated about the time I shot that guy in the Gulf, describing it as a pivotal and meaningful experience. This is the point when I felt empathy for the enemy. I understood that they were just people too. I'm not a coward. Anybody who knows me knows that. I learned in the Gulf through the news that people are the same. It doesn't matter why you kill a person. You're still killing humans. How did I feel about killing those soldiers? At the time, it was instinctive. No feelings. You turn off your feelings until after you have time to deal with them. It's like a computer. You put them in memory and access them later. There was a lot of activity immediately after that. A lot of things were happening. In the end, I can accept the fact that I did kill those Iraqis. And I think that in my heart, maybe it would have been wrong, but that's life in the 20th century. Humans kill humans. I don't kill for pleasure, and I don't kill for personal gain.
Wow. Foreshadowing?
Is it?
He didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think he did. Yeah,
some would say he might not have even did it.
So some might say that he was. Some might say that he wouldn't have done it without some sort of other impetus, perhaps provided by an outside force or organization, even. But that's just a theory. Anyway. General Schwarzkopf heralded the initial assault as a dramatic success. Coalition troops encountered minimal resistance as they entered Iraq and Iraqi-occupied Kuwait, capturing thousands of POWs along the way. Although the U.S. refused to release casualty information, 7 U.S. Marines died as they passed through the Saudi village of Kavji. Anyway. Still, said Schwarzkopf, this was a remarkably light number of casualties, and he was delighted with the progress.
Ziria, I'm sorry that this is depressing to listen to. I will try to make more dead Iraqi jokes to lighten the mood.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it sucks. War is shitty and not something that we should enter into willy-nilly. But like, it's also it's also so cool in so many ways. War is better hypothetically than it is actually. And if the most that we can confine it to fiction, the better. Still, says, let's see. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney told television viewers, "We have no interest in occupying Iraq, but there won't be any sanctuary inside Iraq for those forces who've been involved in occupying Kuwait." Boy, I really wish that he had remained disinterested in occupying Iraq. Anyway, news reports. Although, you know what? If the Great War, if the GWOT had gone as well as the first Gulf War, none of us would have a lot to complain about, to be honest. So, I mean, it is what it is. News reports later detailed how the majority of Iraqis simply did not want to fight and were killed as they vacated the vehicles and trenches they inhabited, waving white flags. John Simpson wrote that the battles of the Gulf War were not like those of World War II, but instead merely the slaughter of tens of thousands of Third World soldiers armed only with weapons incapable of penetrating American armor. Almost every Iraqi soldier would have willingly given himself up if he had been given the chance. Even the punishment squads, which were based behind the punishment squads, which were based behind the Iraqi lines to shoot deserters, had little interest in obeying their orders. Many of them planned to desert themselves. The unnecessary slaughter of thousands of Iraqis came to be called by those who had been there, including McVeigh, a high-tech turkey shoot. McVeigh also said that what came later was much worse, but did not elaborate. Wow. Yeah. Well, Ziria, you saying that there was some fuck shit that went on, but that I got, we've mentioned it a couple times, but in two sections here, and we will get to it in this episode. We're gonna get to the Basra Highway, and that's probably the most fucked thing to happen in the first Gulf War. So hold on to your butt. The bulldozer assault. I wish to use the words of Justice Brandeis, dissenting in Olmsted, to speak for me. He wrote, "Our government is the potent, the omnipresent teacher. For good or ill, it teaches the whole people by its example." Timothy James McVeigh at his sentencing hearing, August 4th, 1997.
That is a hell of a quote to use.
That's a great one, actually.
This guy is smart.
Smart. On February 25th, 1991, 15 hours ahead of schedule. Okay, so yeah, Timmy, this guy who is smart. I kind of like him. He can come home and fuck my skeleton wife.
Hey.
On February 25th, 1991. Look, man, I think I'm gonna keep doing it. Where Hudson's wife is a reanimated skeleton is the new canon.
Who said anything about reanimated?
Who said anything about reanimated? How dare you, sir? I am no necromancer. I am a proud necrophile.
Anyway. We like to have fun.
We like to have fun. We love our necrophiliacs, don't we, folks? On February 25th, 1991, 15 hours ahead of schedule, McVeigh's division had crossed into southern Iraq and completed what General Schwarzkopf called a classic breaching that would be studied for years. McVeigh's Bradley was in the lead, moving parallel to Iraqi trenches along the Iraq-Saudi border until they shifted northward and continued for 300 miles. For over 100 hours, the Big Red One engaged the Iraqi army in an awesome display of death that would have shaken the most steadfast soldier and took thousands of prisoners in the process. During the initial entry into Iraq, McVeigh's Bradley stopped briefly. The radio operator, having seen what appeared to be a large number of troops approaching, attempted to make contact with them in order to determine if they were friendlies. Just at that moment, the radio malfunctioned, and although the sights were not properly set on the Bradley's 25 millimeter, Lieutenant Rodriguez ordered them to drive out and investigate. Upon doing so, British troops who were cleaning out mines informed them that they had just driven into a minefield.
This guy sucks.
Yeah. Wow.
Hey, man.
Hey, man.
What you mean it's a minefield? No, this is not your field.
This is not. I was gonna go there too. That's perfect.
This is Iraq, Holmes.
This is Saddam's. I mean, I'm pretty sure.
They picked this lieutenant up at the Home Depot before they deployed.
They were like, we need a CO.
See, command, see, trabajo, yes.
McVeigh said that Lieutenant Rodriguez almost plowed the Brits over. Although they didn't, the incident foreshadowed what was to happen soon after. Oh, boy. In his strikingly insensitive 1994 account of the Gulf War entitled Iron Soldiers, How America's 1st Armored Division Crushed Iraq's Elite Republican Guard, military historian Tom Carhart, man, all right, strikingly insensitive 1994 account.
That
sounds like a read. Sounds like a great read. Provided a highly sanitized, feel-good version of Desert Storm, one that, it is safe to assume, passed Pentagon and military muster. Among the many stories Carhart recounted was one relayed to him by a female MP from the 337 Armored McVeigh's battalion. The MP was tasked with minding the few hundred Iraqi POWs. The 337th had thus far captured. She said that while she minded the POWs, an Army engineering vehicle had scooped out a trench about 12 feet wide and 6 feet deep with wire around it. As she tried to herd the POWs into the trench, she observed that many of the prisoners were literally in tears, grown men groveling on their knees with uplifted hands, pleading for their lives. She then realized with a little shock that they believed the Americans were about to bury them, as Iraqi leaders had prophesied. Because there were no translators available to the MP, she gathered up candy, which they had in abundance, and MREs, and saw to it that each POW had handfuls of the food. After they received their candy, the POWs became confusedly silent, asking themselves, why would the Yankee devil feed us candy if he was going to bury us? Until eventually they realized that they were in no danger, and all of the Iraqis' fears vanished.
It's really funny.
Classic female move.
Could you imagine like RFK as the commanding general on the ground? It's like, well, we're going to try and kill them slowly by giving them red 40 in the candy we give them.
I've decided to feed the Iraqis actual poison. It may be against the Geneva Convention, but I think that the amount of red 40 will permanently alter their metabolism for the worse.
How come Iraqi Fruit Loops don't have red 40 in them?
They need to have at least 10 times the amount of the American Fruit Loops.
See,
if we want to win this war.
See, yours sounds more like Bill Clinton, and mine sounds like that one guy in the anti-smoking commercial.
Yeah, I need to work. I perhaps I have just not performed enough cunnilingus to adequately imitate RFK. I will have to get on that.
I will say that if the communists ever win, they should give out candy first.
Candy first, then bauxite mine.
Then bullet to the head.
Let's see here. From February 24th to 25th, a nightmarish scene occurred that Ramsey Clark described as the most horrifying story of all time.
The story worse than anything by H.P. Lovecraft.
Worse than anything by zero H.P. Lovecraft. The story exposed a war very different from Carhart, or the one Americans saw in the nightly news. It was first reported on September 12th, 1991, and was picked up by several news outlets, whose shocking headlines declared that U.S. Army buried Iraqi soldiers alive in Gulf War. The incident, or series of incidents, occurred near the Saudi-Iraqi border as the 1st Mechanized Infantry Division, in their breaching effort, tore through over 70 miles of barbed wire, minefields, bunkers, and trenches, about 3 feet wide and 6 feet deep, defended by, according to division estimates, 8,000 Iraqi soldiers. After howitzers and rocket launchers rained hell upon Iraqis in their trenches, the heavily armored Abrams and Bradley vehicles broke through, and the real slaughter began. During what came to be known as the bulldozer assault, Abrams tanks, outfitted with plows and scrapers, broached the trenches. I'm pretty sure that has to be breached trenches. Yeah. Shoveling mounds of sand into them, burying alive the Iraqis inside. Vulcan armored carriers and Bradley. Inside. Vulcan armored carriers and Bradley vehicles drove alongside the trenches, firing upon those attempting to surrender, and others who continued to return fire with small arms. The Armored Combat Earth Movers, ACEs, cleaned up the horrifying scene afterwards by burying the scattered arms and legs still in view, so that none of the journalists arriving 36 hours later could report carnage.
Oof.
Wowee.
They were found with red candy still in their hands.
a single
my cold red hands.
A single amputated hand clutching Skittles. Yeah. The record shows that as early as June 5th, 1995, weeks after McVeigh's arrest, the Jones team was aware of the bulldozer assault and had noted their need to determine whether any members of his platoon actually ran over Iraqi trenches, burying soldiers in them, or if they had seen evidence of this as they approached the trenches. If any of his fellow soldiers spoke to the defense team about it, no such documentation was located in the Jones collection. However, upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that the McVeigh's company, his Bradley among them, spearheaded the breaching operations and led the bulldozer assault. Interesting. In the few reports about it, news outlets quoted at least 2 individuals whom McVeigh knew. In September 1991, one of them, Colonel Anthony Moreno, who commanded the 1st Mechanized Lead Brigade against the most heavily defended trenches during the assault, described it, telling reporters, "What you saw was a bunch of buried trenches with people's arms and legs sticking out of them. For all I know, we could have killed thousands. As Iraqi soldiers saw what we were doing and how effectively we were doing it, they began jumping out of their holes and surrendering. Our firepower kept the Iraqis down in their trenches. They were incapable of firing back."
Oof.
No existing.
That's got to be the worst way to go.
Got to be the worst way to go. Yeah, absolutely. Being Iraqi. No existing biography of McVeigh explores the horror of the bulldozer assault in any depth, or even mentions it as such. In his book, Stickney simply wrote, "A lot of shooting by the Americans was directed at the enemy's dug-in trenches." Ham acknowledged that McVeigh's platoon assigned to roll up the trenches and nearby artillery bunkers supporting them. This involved rolling over them in Bradley's tanks, trucks, and giant earth movers, suffocating to death hundreds of Iraqi troops in the trenches. This tactic not only effectively killed the enemy, but the huge pile of corpses provided a sturdy foundation for a smooth crossing point for the invading forces. Woof.
That sounds like straight out of Stalingrad, like one of the stories that Dan Carlin relates in his I forget what the title is, but it's his Stalingrad series, which is excellent. He talks about how the Russians, the Soviets rather, would take German POWs, line them up on the ground, and then pour water on them so they'd freeze, so the tanks would have something to roll over.
Oh my god! Structural POWs is that's Soviet engineering right there. Herbeck and Mitchell did not directly address the bulldozer assault. The bodies buried alive or McVeigh's role in it. Rather, they allude to it obliquely by observing that the motto of the 7th Corps was, "If it's in front of us, it dies." And because of the sounds made by the tanks rolling over Iraqis, U.S. soldiers began to refer to the dead they'd created as crunchies. Dear Lord.
Ooh.
The thought of what that must sound like, you'd get like several dozen dudes getting buried simultaneously in a bunch of sand, and that sound translating through the ground. That's wild. Actually, you know what? I do have an experience that I might be able to relate. So at one point, and I will give you a cap some cap lore here. At one point, I worked as a grave digger, and this was like a summer job.
We're doing a lot of grave related content tonight.
Yeah. And FYI, when you if you're ever planning a funeral for someone, don't spend a whole lot on the casket. Because what I am about to tell you is what they do at every graveyard. So you dig the hole, you intern the person, everyone leaves, and then you got to fill the hole in, right? Now, the issue is that if you dig a hole and then fill it back up with the dirt you just pulled out of it, you will have too much dirt because you've introduced a bunch of air. So the dirt's not going to pack in appropriately. It's even worse when you add a casket, right? More volume. So what do you do so that you can maintain a flat graveyard that doesn't have a bunch of divots? Yeah. You get out a 7-foot long pole with holes in it attached to a hose, drive it into the ground and flood the grave. The grave will rapidly fill, and the weight of the water and the soil will crush the casket. And you can feel it pop. You can feel it pop when it has gone. And then at that point, you top the grave with more dirt so that it ends up being level, and you knock off for lunch. So I can kind of imagine what that sort of a lot of breaking being translated through the ground is like, and it's a weird feeling. I have not felt anything else like it, and that's kind of how I imagine this. So, don't spend a lot of money on a casket. Yeah, you heard it here first, folks, probably. Anyways, the handful of existing news reports about the incident provide further details. Participants later said that they had carefully planned and rehearsed the bulldozer assault weeks before it commenced, a claim confirmed by satellite photographs. One captain described the psychological trauma he later suffered because of his role in the slaughter. The Iraqis, he said, had been throwing down their weapons and were begging the U.S. troops to take them prisoner. I wish we could have, he reflected. But after taking so many thousands of prisoners, the order came down that it was endangering our men to capture anymore. So we called in the bulldozers. I had to give the order men who drove the earth movers to just cover up the trenches. I buried hundreds of men alive. And if I disobey orders, I should have been shot for insubordination on the battlefield. That's war. Others also provided vivid descriptions. Captain Bernie Williams said, "There were times when we knew they were in a bunker, and we gave them a chance to give up. I'd tell my guns to fire off to the side, give them a chance. I would say about 60% of the guys gave up. And there were some who decided to gut it out. A lot of guys were buried in bunkers, I'm sure. We just drove over them or backed into them to make the walls collapse. Once we went through there, other than the ones who surrendered, there wasn't anybody left." Sergeant Joe Queen, who received a Bronze Star for his role in the attack, said, "We were traveling at 5 to 7 miles an hour, just moving along the trench. You don't see them, the Iraqis. You're up there in the half hatch, and you know what you got to do. You did it as much as you could close your eyes and do it." I don't think they had any idea, because the look on their faces as we came through the berm was just a look of shock. I feel sorry for them that they stayed in the trenches, but they did what they did for their country, just like we would. The military furnished us with this piece of equipment, and that's what it's designed to do. An unnamed Iraqi soldier who survived the attack said, "Some of the soldiers were walking towards us, the U.S. troops holding their arms up to surrender, and the tanks moved in and killed them. They dug a hole in the ground, and then they buried the soldiers and leveled it. I really don't know how to describe. It was horrible to witness. I saw one soldier and his body was just torn apart by a bulldozer. The upper part was on one side and the lower on the other side.
And then the U.S. military took those tactics and used them at Waco.
So true. Yeah. Let's see.
Operation Bury the Iraqis.
Oh man, Bernie McBulldozer. God damn it. Oh god, they call him the grave popper. Fuck. Yeah, let's hope that one doesn't stick. Anyways, many journalists said they had been tightly controlled and intentionally kept back from the bulldozed areas. One report observed it was a battlefield without the stench of urine, feces, blood, and bits of flesh. The dead had eluded eyewitnesses, cameras, and video footage. A war correspondent for The Guardian said that when he arrived at the scene, there were no bodies anywhere. When he asked the public affairs officer from the first where the bodies had gone, the official replied, "What bodies?" It's the Stone Toss comic. Bodies? Simpson wrote, there was an intensive effort to make sure that the scale of Iraqi losses was hidden from the world. When the Pentagon finally allowed journalists on the site, there were no bodies, no barbed wire, not even trenches. It was too ugly for the public to be told about, and for that reason, it had all been thoroughly tidied away. Nice, clean battlefields. They're going to be the cleanest, most beautiful battlefields you've ever seen, folks.
You're going to think, wow, it's like a bunch of bulldozers went through and cleaned up the joint.
It's gonna look like a shovel-ready project. Yeah.
We're going to have the best foundation. It's a foundation of corpses.
It's like the Hoover Dam. You wonder, who designs the earth movers for the first Gulf War? Like were they actually just caterpillars, or
it was Halliburton with their oil money, and they're evil. The corporations, man.
Well, I mean like literally what were the earth movers?
Honestly, they were probably they said they were ACEs, so that was probably designed by like General Dynamics or something.
Got it. Although the House and Senate Armed Services Committee claimed the Pentagon withheld details about the bulldozer assault in their final report on the Gulf War, it was justified as a legitimate tactical maneuver in a number of ways by those who planned and led it. In Dick Cheney's 2002 report to Congress that attempted to justify the assault, he wrote, because of the uncertainties and the need to minimize the loss of U.S. lives, military necessity required that the assault be conducted with maximum speed and violence. Other military planners claimed that if an opportunity for the Iraqis to surrender had been announced over the loudspeakers, U.S. soldiers would have had to exit their armored vehicles and engage the Iraqis in hand-to-hand combat, or could even have become the targets of a chemical attack. Others said that while they had given the Iraqis a chance to surrender, the Iraqis declined the offer. When others said that when asked to estimate the total number burned, DoD spokesperson Pete Williams denied the Army had intended to bury anyone alive, but then continued, remarking that war is hell. I would certainly say many were buried. I don't mean to be flippant, but there's no nice way to kill somebody in a war.
Oh, wow. So actually it was Caterpillar that designed them.
Amazing. I wonder if they were actually any fucking different, or if they were just the same same thing painted olive, or I guess
they look like they kind of look like a tank, but with a blade in front of it.
Interesting. Also very Kino. I don't mean to be flippant, but there's no nice way to kill somebody in a war. There is no provision in the Geneva Convention that would prohibit this operation. The Iraqi soldiers that were killed in this process were those who chose to stay in their trenches or behind obstacles and fight during the breaching operation. The motto of Fort Riley's 1st Mechanized Infantry Division, the Big Red One, claims no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. Shortly after the bulldozer incident, Major General Thomas Rames, the commander of the entire 1st Division, declared to journalists, I didn't come over here to fight fair. Rather, he came to fight, win, and save American lives. The goal Rames achieved by burying what he claimed were 400 Iraqis during the frontline breach. When reporters questioned Army officials about the incident during the press conference at Fort Riley, where McVeigh was stationed before and after the Gulf War, officials there said that the bulldozing method had saved American lives, as the Iraqi barrier posed the biggest threat to U.S. troops. Rames said, "All I can tell you is that there were little hands and arms sticking out of the dirt. They chose not to surrender. They chose to fight. So we buried them." Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Hawkins, who helped plan the assault, said the point was to terrorize the Iraqis into surrendering, and thought it had worked. "It caused an instant hands up in many places," remarked Hawkins.
He planned it out in the sandbox behind his in his backyard.
Still haven't found any of those GI Joes.
I shouldn't have used the tan ones.
I should have used Destro. He's got a nice silver head. He's easy to find. When asked if this was the standard operating procedure for the U.S. Army, Colonel Moreno said, "This was not doctrine. My concept is to defeat the enemy with your power and equipment. We're going to bludgeon them with every piece of equipment we've got. I'm not going to sacrifice the lives of my soldiers." That's not cost effective. Lieutenant Lon Maggart, an officer from Fort Riley, whom McVeigh knew, said, "I know burying people like that sounds pretty nasty, but it would be even nastier if we had to put our troops in the trenches and clean them out with bayonets."
I feel like there's a middle ground there. You don't have to do World War I bayonet warfare.
In fact, bring back shotguns with bayonets on them. Bring it back. Those are
get an RPG with an
unbelievably Kino. It would be even now. In fact, Moreno and Maggart, both of whom McVeigh knew, were among the first to talk to reporters about the attack. Both said that they intentionally used the bulldozer tactic to minimize American casualties, although in reality, those inside the tanks and Bradleys were likely in no danger from the small arms fire coming from the trenches. The entire ordeal, at least for their brigades, lasted about 17 minutes. The Army later condemned and punished Moreno, who nominated McVeigh for several awards and decorations for his performance during combat in the Gulf for providing this information to reporters. Not for doing it, for providing the information.
No one likes a snitch.
Yep.
We're coming up on 3 hours there, Cap. Do you want to finish this and do chats, or?
Sneed some super chats if you can, man. I guess we aren't going to get to the Basra Highway.
But that's a good reason for you to come back next week.
Well, it's
not next week. 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, let's finish this and then we'll talk about it. No one can really say exactly how many Iraqi soldiers were buried alive or how many had attempted to surrender before meeting their deaths. Newsday and The Guardian cited military officials who claimed 2,000 Iraqis actually surrendered. Other sources put the number at between 11,000 and 20,000. An Iraqi soldier said he thought Americans had buried perhaps 300 of his comrades, while Iraqi military spokespeople claimed the number was between 1,000 and 2,000. Some U.S. infantry personnel told reporters that they had no idea how many people they had buried under the sand. Rames said 400. Dick Cheney withheld details about it to a congressional report on the war, but did state that the Army buried 457 Iraqis in the sand.
There's no way he could get that number.
That's awfully specific, right?
I personally buried 457 people.
I can attest.
I took their hearts for later use.
And they apologized to him. Maggart estimated that his brigade buried 650. A military source quoted in the Jerusalem Post said 6,000. Schwarzkopf's staff gave estimates of between 50,000 and 75,000 for the total number killed in the trenches. It was hard to obtain an accurate body count given the literal cover-up that, according to the Pentagon, claimed no American casualties. While Geneva Convention protocols dictate that surrendering enemy troops be taken prisoner and not killed, the number of surrendering Iraqis would have been much higher had they not been summarily executed when they attempted to do so. Many received medals for participating in the gory scene.
They weren't surrendering, they were attacking with their hands up. It's an Iraqi tribal Attack dance.
It's yeah, they're trying to strangle you. The aerial assaults that had occurred since January 16th at the barrier where the bulldozer attack took place were equally horrifying. One report on January 25th said that much of the Iraqi artillery were destroyed by aerial napalm and fuel air bombings, which consisted of over 11,000 pounds of high explosives, dropped 30 minutes before the bulldozer's assault began. Still, they claimed U.S. soldiers continued to face a formidable foe and therefore had to ignite oil in some defensive trenches. Among other methods, according to a Freedom of Information Act request, the U.S. Marines confirmed that they had dropped 489 napalm bombs on those poor fuckers in the trenches.
Oh, man.
The aerial and ground images of the aftermath in Basra, one military historian wrote, ranks up there with the young Vietnamese girl running naked from a napalm attack or the Zapruder film. This was the first, but by no means the last, time that McVeigh found himself at the center of a contentious moment in U.S. history.
That's one way to put it, Wendy.
Well, so yeah, next time after Thanksgiving,
yes,
in
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, and I think someone in chat had mentioned that the earlier time seems better. And actually it does kind of feel to me like the earlier time is good. Do you think that in the future, Hudson, you want to do 6 as a start time?
You mean 8? Or I guess
I mean 7 Eastern, 6 God's time.
That's tough for me.
That's tough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then we can keep the time. Then we can keep our previous time. Sorry, Lacuna, it doesn't work for 50% of the hosts. So, yeah. So, if anyone has any questions, requests,
Mr. EL, which Bush 1 or Bush 2?
Oh yeah, good question.
I'm gonna. Well, I mean, anybody can. What do you call it? Bush 2. Anybody can repent and go to heaven, as long as he does so with clear intentions. So I'm gonna go with probably Tim McVeigh.
I think that if you did literally nothing wrong, then you're probably gonna go to heaven. So
I think
I'll leave it up to you to decide who I think. So
let's see. How far are we in the book? We are
we're actually pretty far. We are in, let's see here. We haven't gotten to a Maranoid yet. So
we're probably about maybe halfway to 2/3 done.
Yeah, I think we're probably at about the 60% mark. So, yeah, there are actually only 2 chapters left. But Wendy, I mean, the whole book is 4 chapters and then an extremely long preface. So, and they're all about 20%. They're all about 20%. Yeah. So. And we're not doing the footnotes. There are a lot of footnotes. For example, the last line in this is footnote 82, and that's footnote 82 for this chapter. So, we easily get into triple digits on all of these footnotes. So if you like Library of Mass Destruction, but you want the full rundown, the full Wendy painting experience with footnotes, you are going to have to go to the Amazon link in our description.
No, we should link the Trine Day site. Don't let Amazon get a percentage.
But we want us to get a percentage.
And true. Yes.
Trine Day does not offer affiliate links, and that is an affiliate link. So, or you can go to Trine Day if you really want to, and you can just, tip you boys.
Yeah, I don't get any of the money. Apparently it all goes to Gabe.
It's 100%. Look, you have no idea how often that boy needs a Z-Pack for getting the clap. It is unbelievable. We're gonna have to start getting a subscription to delousing powder too, because he is like an Iraqi infantryman.
That's why I call him Mr. Burns.
Oh God, Mr. Burns win IP.
It's
all right.
Code Grave Popper, Mr. Woodpit. There we go.
Speaking of burning, next time you will be able to hear us go over the Basra Highway.
If this was too light and friendly for you, next time we get some really sick stuff.
Yeah, I know it seems bad right now, but trust me,
it's about to
get worse. Yeah, and then we can get and eventually Timothy McVeigh is going to do something that's awfully naughty. So
naughty.
We will get there. So I guess that is it for this wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us once again, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Make sure to like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification.
Follow us on Spotify, where we also host these recordings for your convenient listening pleasure.
And if you like the sound of my voice, I have a separate podcast about books called Cannon Fodder over at the Double Dealer.
New episode was released today, so
you can get Dave the Distributist. It was a great one.
And also, Tookie's Mag will be releasing an episode most likely tomorrow, but if not in the next few days, covering Cormac McCarthy's love life. So we will see you next time.
We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our history and our doctrine, and remember that we are not descended from fearful men, not from men who feared to write, to associate, to speak, and to defend the causes that were for the moment unpopular. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. Good night.